Chapter 768. Bang! For the last kick, Beligaju landed on the venomous spider's stomach. He didn't need to use a lot of strength to make the venomous spider suffer a fate worse than death. It only had one breath left. More and more blood bubbles came out of its throat, but it couldn't stop it. Helene Vivian watched this scene silently. She thought that Mr. Spider must have never thought that he would die from overeating one day. In fact, the process of dying from overeating was quite slow. It was even more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. The venomous spider would hold on to its last breath for a short period of time. Then, it would be a fate worse than death. After dealing with the venomous spider, Beligaju walked back. However, this time, there was no smile on his face. When he looked at Helene Vivian's wound again, countless black feathers fell from behind him. Even the stone under his feet cracked. "If I still couldn't find you, I would crush all the living and dead here." His tone was still the same as before. It was so calm that no one could hear his emotions. However, Helene Vivian knew that at that moment, what he said was his true thoughts. It could be seen from the fact that he broke the stone walls of the ancient tomb. She knew very well that no matter how elegant Beligaju looked, he was actually the darkest and most vicious person in his heart. It was just a matter of which side of him he was willing to show to the world. In front of her, he would even clean up the bloodstains before letting her open her eyes. It was as if he wanted to maintain the perfect image in her heart. It was also as if he didn't do many things because she was around. For example, Whose repeated provocations. If it was only His Highness alone. Helene Vivian didn't need to think to know how miserable Whose death would be. His Highness could even make him feel like the venomous spider. Even death would be a relief. This person was hated since he was young, whether it was his birth mother or his father. It wasn't that she had never seen his childhood situation. It was because she had seen it that she felt pain in her heart. Perhaps this was the feeling of liking someone. Even if he was an executioner who massacred everyone, you would only care if he was anxious when you saw him. Helene Vivian reached out and hugged His Highness. She said with a smile, "It's okay. I'm fine. You came in time." The man's tall and straight figure paused for a moment, and then he slowly opened his hands. All the hostility turned into gentleness, and he pressed the head in front of him, which always made him lose his sense of propriety, into his arms. His thin lips pursed. "Now you can't please me, but this kind of thing will only happen once." He said the last sentence to himself. The moment Helene Vivian disappeared, Beligaju finally tasted the feeling of regret described by humans. No matter if he was a human or a demon. He never knew what regret was. Nothing could escape his control. But at that time, he regretted. He regretted not holding this idiot's hand all the time. He regretted not taking out this damn spider and crushing it to death in the first place. Beligaju's arms tightened again, and his low voice was like quicksand. "I really should lock you up so that you can't go anywhere." "How can that be? I still have to find relics to feed the baby." Helene Vivian smiled beautifully. After a while, she seemed to think of something, and her shrewd eyes narrowed. "Why did that spider say that my stomach was full of spiritual energy? Shouldn't it be evil energy? It's so strange." Beligaju raised his eyebrows. "That is to say, you were targeted because of the little ghost in your stomach." Helene Vivian said, "That's not the point. I said before that the little ghost was a troublemaker before it was born." Beligaju had been dissatisfied with a certain little ghost for a long time. Although it was his child, it didn't affect his dislike of it. When the bigger fetus heard Beligaju's words, he directly protested, "If you want to talk about troublemakers, then father is." The smaller fetus didn't respond to the bigger fetus, but lowered its small head as if thinking about something. The bigger fetus continued with a cold snort, if it weren't for father's affections back then, why would a fake Phoenix girl come out and fight with mother for the Sarira? She made the capital city a mess. Not only did she affect mother, but she also infected me with energy. Mother had no choice but to come to the ancient tomb. It's all because of me. The smaller fetus dispiritedly interrupted the bigger fetus. If it wasn't for me, mother wouldn't have lost the spirit energy and martial chi in her body. I've thought about this. The food that big brother ate was caught from outside. Only I had to constantly absorb spirit energy to maintain my current state. Mother lost her spirit energy when I was born. The poisonous spider targeted mother because of the aura emitted from my body. If it wasn't for me, perhaps mother wouldn't have to suffer so much. The bigger fetus didn't say anything at first. It just looked at the smaller fetus calmly. Then, it hugged the smaller fetus in its arms and put away its usual arrogance, leaving only softness. If what you said is true, then I shouldn't exist. I'm mother's nemesis. Now that I'm in her stomach, I've attracted a lot of energy. When I'm born, I might even lose my mind and reach my claws for mother. Whenever I think of that scene, I feel that it's better to just stay in mother's stomach like this, or just not exist at all. At least this way, mother won't be in danger. No, big brother has to be here. The smaller fetus leaned its head over again. Big brother is so useful. He can protect mother at critical times. The bigger fetus didn't say anything else. The smaller fetus also stopped talking. The two of them hugged each other for warmth, but they couldn't resist the thoughts in their hearts. As if she sensed the movement in her stomach, Helene Vivian reached out and caressed her lower abdomen. Her movements were gentler than before. She looked at Beligaju and said in a clear voice, "He's not trouble. He's the person I love the most besides you." Bailey Jiaju was not prepared to be confessed to out of the blue. He reached out and covered Helene Wei Wei's eyes with his hands. Then, he kissed her and pressed his lips against hers. Even his breath was warm. Helene Vivian sniffed the familiar mint scent and nestled in his arms, allowing him to check her wound. Her fingers were weak, but she didn't forget about the important matter. You've always thought that the baby is a demon, right? Yes. Beligaju looked at Helene Vivian's bleeding ankle with heavy eyes, thinking about something. Helene Vivian frowned, but the poisonous spider thinks that the baby in my stomach is very spiritual. Its sense of smell won't be wrong, unless... Chapter 769. Helene Vivian's eyes suddenly lit up. Her long legs, which were originally in a daze, suddenly bent forward. There was a rare excitement on her face. I have 2 babies in my belly. That's right. It must be so. Helene Wei Wei looked at Bailey Jiaju with a smile in her eyes. Because the demonic nature of one of them is too strong, as a father, it's easy for you to not sense the other baby's aura. However, the other magical creatures can't sense the demonic nature of the other baby. Since he's in my body, he can successfully conceal his aura. Under such circumstances, the other baby's weak spiritual aura will seep out and be detected by the other magical creatures. When we came to the ancient tomb, the magical creature in the sea waterfall was also targeting me. Although it was scared away by you before it could get close to me, but if you think about it carefully, even if it wanted to eat someone, it should have targeted Zhuge Yun, who has spiritual aura. Now it seems that it must be because of the babies. Helene Vivian's eyes became brighter as she spoke. She reached out and stroked her lower abdomen. When it came to the topic of children, she would speak with a gentleness that encompassed all things in the world. At this time, if Senior Li was here, he would definitely feel familiar. Unfortunately, Senior Li was not here. Helene Vivian only talked to Beligaju endlessly. There are 2 babies, but the palace only made a pair of tiger head shoes and a set of clothes. Imperial grandfather also ordered the palace to make a small dragon bed. Now it seems that we need to add another set. Also, those small bowls and chopsticks are made in the style of boys. Previously, you said that one of them is a boy. I don't know if the other one is a boy or a girl. If it is a girl, then we have to make it according to the princess's style. I always feel that there are a lot of things to do when we go back. I don't know if the two little buns will fight when they are placed together, or will one hug the other. When the time comes, let them carry small school bags to the White Academy together. That will definitely be very cute. After hearing Helene Vivian's words, the smaller fetus was stunned for a moment. His heart that was originally filled with self-blame gradually warmed up. He looked at the bigger fetus blankly and cutely and said, "Mother knows me. Brother, mother knows me." Yes. The bigger fetus lowered his head and imitated how his mother stroked them. He stroked the smaller fetus' head and said, "Furthermore, mother likes you very much. Look at how happy mother is." Of course, the small fetus saw it. He turned his big eyes and said gently and seriously, "Big brother, we have to go out together. We can't let mother be disappointed and sad." "Okay," the bigger fetus said coolly as he hugged the bigger fetus. He was now half a head taller than the small fetus. Originally, there were only two small silhouettes, and they couldn't even be called a child. However, because the bigger fetus expression looked like a small adult, when he held the smaller fetus, he didn't have the hostility he had when he grabbed the dead spirit. He looked like a good older brother, and even knew to lower his head to kiss the head of the smaller fetus. The picture was indescribably warm and cute. Beligaju was also stunned. He did not expect that there would be two babies. In other words, other than Imp. There was another human. A human like Vivian. Beligaju's eyes darkened. When his fingers rubbed Helene Vivian's leg, he suddenly pressed his body down. This time, he did not kiss Helene Vivian's lips. Instead, his lips fell on her injured ankle, and the tip of his tongue licked the blood on it. If the other baby was a human, then they would have to speed up. He was a demon, and he understood the nature of demons better than anyone else. Sometimes, even if they were unwilling, the existence of demons was to rob. When the day came that they needed more nutrients to sustain themselves, they would make a move on the other baby. This had never happened before. One was a demon, and the other was a human. It was like locking a wolf and a sheep together. One day, the sheep would become the wolf's food. This was a cruel way of saying it. But this was a demon. He exuded viciousness and selfishness from his bones. No matter how glamorous his appearance was, it could not change this. Just like how he clearly knew that the woman in front of him did not belong to this world. After a long time, she was destined to be punished by the heavens. But he still forced her to stay by his side. He did not even want to let a second person see her. Beligaju laughed self-deprecatingly. What a crazy possessiveness. Perhaps his mother in the human world was right. He was deformed. But so what? Even if he changed his life and dyed the world with blood, she had to stay by his side. In this regard, he was a little similar to the exorcist guardian. However, in this life, he was the one who found her first. And that guardian, mistakenly thought that the other person was her reincarnation. Beligaju did not know what happened when they were gods together. After falling from the sky, his bloodline had turned black. He looked down on gods and demons. All living beings were no different in front of him. Only she, Helene Vivian, was the only one he wanted. He did not care if what those old men said was true. Even if the person she liked at that time was not him. But now, the person who had her was him. The moment the blood entered his throat, Beligaju's eyes turned red. Helene Vivian did not know what Beligaju was thinking. She only felt that the place where she was kissed was a little numb. She wanted to retract her leg. Hey, what are you doing? Don't you think the blood is dirty? It's not dirty. It's very sweet. When Beligaju raised his head, the tip of his tongue licked his thin lips. The peach blossom eyes under his black hair flashed with a bewitching smile. He was so handsome that he could make any girl's heart flutter. But it needs to be disinfected. As he said that, he clenched his fingers, and his black nails dug into his palm. Bright red blood dripped from his palm onto her wound, drop by drop. Not only did Helene Vivian freeze, but the two fetuses in her stomach also froze. They all knew that as a demon, especially a high-level demon, the most harmful thing to do was to make them bleed dry. Because for a demon, blood meant the formation of a contract, and it also meant eternal submission. That was why every drop of a demon's blood was especially precious. It could bring people back from the dead, and it could also heal wounds quickly. But at the same time, a demon would bear the pain for the victim. Helene Wei Wei's eyes stared blankly at the handsome face in front of her, which was always perfect and impeccable at any time. Did he mean to completely hand himself over to her in the future? When they made the contract, it was only from then on that her soul would belong to him. This was the most cunning part of a demon. Even if it was a life and death contract, the beneficiary would always be the demon. Not all demons were willing to submit to humans. But now, he had added a new weight to the contract. Chapter 770. Why are you looking at me like that? Beligaju's voice faded. His lips were pale and he was about to retract his hand. Helene Vivian's first reaction was to grab his hand. She tore her clothes and bandaged his hand. After she was done, she said softly, "Don't worry, I will be responsible for you for the rest of your life." The two little ones in her stomach were speechless. Weren't these lines supposed to be said by men? Why did mother say it so naturally? Awkward. On the contrary, Bailey Jia Ju was very calm and unruffled. "This is what you said. My heart is more fragile, so you better do as you say, understand?" When Poison Spider heard this, he almost choked on his last gasp of air. "Heh heh heh, a fragile heart. The weak heart is clearly here." On the contrary, Wei Wei earnestly nodded her head, appearing as if she had personally experienced what he said. The bigger fetus was angry. Father is really shameless. He even thought of a way to spill blood. But it can't be considered as a win. If he submits to humans, he will do whatever mother wants him to do. The real beneficiary is mother. The little fetus smiled. In the past, he had always felt that his father was very fickle because he could see that his father was not looking forward to the birth of him and his older brother. He did not even look forward to the birth of his own flesh and blood. This was probably the common trait of all demons, especially his father who had lived for so long. But now, he suddenly understood that his father was not fickle. He had given the last bit of gentleness in his life to his mother. Otherwise, as a high-level demon, he would never submit to a human, especially a demon king, which was even more so. It seemed like brother didn't have to worry about a vixen seducing father anymore. In some ways, father was the one who was tied up. Beligaju obviously knew this, but he didn't seem to care. After the wound on Helene Vivian's ankle healed, he immediately returned to his usual noble and cold self. He bent his slender waist slightly and said in a commanding tone, "Come on, I will carry you. It will be faster to walk." Helene Vivian smiled and pounced on him. She rubbed her face against his back and asked comfortably, "I'm still curious whether the other baby is a boy or a girl." Beligaju fixed her long legs and said in a warning tone, "It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, as long as you don't come out like that little brat when you shouldn't. Aren't you a little too strict with the babies?" Helene Vivian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bailey Jiaju leisurely replied, "This Highness is thinking of them, lest they end up with the same fate as that stupid spider." Hellion Vivian, it would have been better if His Highness hadn't mentioned spiders, but the moment he did, she couldn't help but look back. The spider was not completely dead yet, but it was on the verge of death. The shape of its stomach was slightly distorted by the stones. Originally, when Hellion Vivian was searching for the soul fragments, she didn't find that a certain highness had the habit of feeding the divine beast vegetables. Now that she saw the spider, she knew that what the fire Qilin said before was true. It wasn't an exaggeration at all. Compared to letting people eat until they died, it was not an exaggeration to feed a carnivorous divine beast vegetables. Hellion Vivian fell into deep thought as she felt the wind blowing past her ears. Even though Beligaju didn't tell her about the fetus, the smart Hellion Vivian still thought about it. She wasn't worried when she had one baby. But now, she had two babies. One was a demon, and the other was a human. When normal twins were in the mother's womb, one would always steal the other's nutrients. This was the rule of survival. Moreover, now that it was a demon and a human, the situation would definitely be worse. There was no time. She had to reach the main coffin before the Ni family. The two people who were so focused on obtaining the Saraira didn't know that at this time, someone would accidentally step into this place. That person was Ni Biao. He originally thought that the journey to the main coffin would be smooth as long as he followed the spider's instructions. However, he didn't know why, but the deeper he went, the more he felt that someone was calling his name. When he finally reacted, he had already killed the people in his team. He didn't know where the rest of them went. It turned out that he had been separated from the rest of the team. However, Ni Biao didn't understand why he was hallucinating. It was as if someone ordered him to kill those people. Was there a mistake? He was the best exorcist in the world. He was invulnerable to ghosts. Who could order him around? The conceited Ni Biao had long forgotten that the reason he knew where the mechanism was because a demon told him. In the beginning, when Ni Biao entered the spider's nest, he didn't have much of a reaction. However, when he saw the huge shadow in front of him, he was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He couldn't retreat or advance. The poisonous spider also recognized Ni Biao. It gasped for breath and narrowed its eyes. "It's you." Only then did Ni Biao see its current state. He wasn't afraid anymore. He sneered at the poisonous spider, "Evil creature, die." Ni Biao's spell was still effective against a dying demon. The light from the peachwood sword split into three and pierced the poisonous spider's body one by one. It was easy to see through Ni Biao's plan. If he could bring back one of the black spider's limbs when he returned to the team, not only would the Ni family regain their lost reputation, it would also increase his chances of winning the competition. Most importantly, his reputation among the exorcists would only continue to grow. The poisonous spider never thought that he would die in the hands of such a greedy villain. He didn't want to die at all. He tried his best to fight back. However, it was obvious that he had reached his limit. He only spat out a silver thread, which hurt Ni Biao's flesh. Then, he collapsed heavily behind him. Ni Biao was in so much pain that his head hurt. The spider's silk was poisonous. Although it only grazed his arm, when blood flowed out, it was as if he was scalded. He snorted at the spider again. He raised the sword in his hand and chopped off one of its limbs. At this time, he coincidentally saw the exposed magical pill of the spider after its death. The voice in his mind started again. It sounded very familiar, but at that moment, Ni Biao couldn't remember who it was. Eat the magical pill and you will become a more powerful exorcist. No. Ni Biao shook his head and retracted his hand. It was recorded in the Book of Exorcism that all exorcists are not allowed to consume magical pills. This is a forbidden spell. Chapter 771. Taoist books are also written by humans. When the time comes for you to rule the entire exorcist demon world, you'll be the one to decide on the forbidden curses. The bewitching voice rang again. Ni Biao could not escape no matter how hard he tried. It was as if the voice came from the bottom of his heart. That's right, history had always been like this. The winner would be the king. As long as he stood at the peak of power, he would still have the final say. Ni Biao reached out his hand again. When he touched the magical pill, a resentful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're right, my daughter. When his heart turned completely black, Ni Biao finally remembered who the voice belonged to. When the magical pill entered his stomach, the scarlet color that symbolized yin energy flashed across his eyes. What followed was a series of creepy smiles. It's time to return to the team. Ni Biao stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He looked like a reptile spitting out its tongue. At this time, the people who were about to reach the main coffin did not realize that they had fallen into a trap from the moment they set off. Now, the trap had finally surfaced. Hellion Vivian felt uneasy as she walked. She did not know what she was feeling uneasy about. Maybe it was because she had not figured out what was wrong with the spiritual aura in the exorcist city. Or maybe it was because of the baby in her stomach. She always felt that she had neglected something, and this point was confirmed when she and Bailey Jiaju re-encountered the large army. Zhuge Yun was lucky. The place where he fell was a place he had been before. He encountered a spider web once and used Hellion Vivian's method to break the web. Soon, he caught up with the rest of the team who were resting. However, when he saw that Hellion Vivian and Beligaju were not there, he anxiously walked here and there. He wanted to call others to help him rescue them. Unfortunately, even if there were 2 or 3 people who wanted to go, they did not know where Beligaju and Hellion Vivian would fall. The ancient tomb's terrain was intricate and complicated. Elder Lee's advice was that it was best to wait in place. If the person came back after 2 hours, then everything would be fine. If he didn't come back, then the result would be obvious. Zhuge Yun was grabbing his hair in regret when he saw Beligaju walking over with Hellion Vivian on his back. He was overjoyed, even though he felt that the 2 of them were in an ambiguous position. But at this time, Zhuge Yun did not care whether the other party was gay or not. As long as these 2 people were alive, that was better than anything else. After listening to Zhuge Yun's words, Hellion Wei realized that not everyone had fallen into the abyss. That was in line with what she had thought before. Before this, the venomous spider did have a spy. Hellion Vivian's eyes swept across the Ni family, who were sitting far away. It was obvious that the Ni family had more teams than any other team. As for the rest, each family had their own team. What a coincidence. However, in the eyes of Hellion Vivian, who had studied law, any coincidences were not so ordinary. Compared to the difficulties of the other teams, none of the Ni family members had fallen. This could only mean one thing, and that was that the spy was in the Ni family's team. As for who this person was, Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. She remembered that the person leading the Ni family was Ni Biao. She did not notice at that time as she only wanted to move forward. Now that she thought about it, Ni Biao's usual practice was to let the disciples take the lead to test whether there was any danger in front. But this time, he unexpectedly took the lead and walked in front. He was not leading the way, but to prevent the Ni family members from falling when he activated the mechanism. Hellion Vivian's brain worked quickly, and her memory seemed to be able to cycle. The venomous spider had said, "Among your group of exorcists, one of them has already been tainted with resentment, and would be controlled by a demon with just a few words. Other demons would not be able to detect it, but I have been in the tomb for thousands of years, so I am especially sensitive to such people. Moreover, one of you is no longer a living person." Since you will all die in the end, you might as well be eaten by me. In other words, Biao had already been tainted with resentment before he entered the tomb. Otherwise, the venomous spider would not have been able to control him. It was impossible for a top exorcist to be bewitched with just a few words. What did the last sentence mean? One of you is no longer a living person. Helene Vivian did not pay attention at that time, and thought that the venomous spider was referring to one person. Now that she thought about it, there were actually two clues. The one who was controlled by the demon was Biao. However, the other person who was no longer a living person was definitely not Biao. In other words, there was always a fatal danger in their group that she had not discovered. Helene Vivian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and then she seemed to have thought of something. She pulled Zhuge Yun over and whispered, "You said before that you saw a corpse in the Ni family." "Yes." Zhuge Yun frowned as if he had recalled a bad memory. Yes, there were a lot of corpses, and those corpses were all piled up in one place. They did not look dead at all, and their skin was as good as a living person's. However, they were indeed dead, and had been dead for a long time. I was so scared that I covered my mouth and ran to the front yard. When I ran out, I met Uncle Ni. He did not look well at that time, and said that there was a demon inside that could not be released. However, he was almost done with it, and told me not to go to the backyard in the future, and not to tell anyone. He even locked the door of the courtyard, and when he saw Father again, he was much more normal. Helene Vivian sneered. He was lying. If there was a demon inside, why didn't he unite all the exorcists to eradicate it? Instead, he did not want anyone to know about it. Piles of corpses, dead for a long time, but still in their original state, were they zombies? No, Zhuge Yun said seriously. Zhuge Yun said seriously, it was because they were not zombies that I was scared at that time. Zombies can be dealt with using Chinese talismans, but those corpses seem to have been preserved by someone. They were so fresh that it was a little scary. Zhuge Yun did not know why he used the word fresh, but strangely, this was the only word he could think of. Fresh corpses. No one would believe these words. Helene Vivian fell into deep thought. A dignified exorcist family would not leave piles of corpses at home. It would only make the house uneasy. Unless they had a reason to do so. Oh right, there's one more thing. Zhuge Yun frowned. Those corpses were just beside Ni Feng's courtyard. Uncle Ni, aren't you worried? Ni Feng. Helene Vivian's eyes flashed. Was Ni Feng very weak when she was young? Chapter 772. How did you know, Brother Wei? Zhuge Yun's eyes lit up, his admiration for Wei Yi increased by another level. Helene Vivian smiled. You said that she was not in good health and had been in seclusion for a long time. She only came out recently. Yes, but I never said that she was not in good health when she was young. Zhuge Yun muttered to himself, then continued. But before Ni Feng grew up, she was indeed a little too weak. Uncle Ni never let her out. There was once when Ni Hu cried and told me that his sister was dying. Ni Hu told you that personally. Helene Vivian narrowed her eyes. Zhuge Yun nodded. Yes, although my relationship with that guy is not good now, we used to play together when we were young. I remember that Ni Hu had a huge reaction at that time, and the whole Ni family was in a bad mood. I heard that even Ni Feng's coffin was ready. Because she was from an exorcist family, she had to be cremated at a designated place after her death. At that time, my father had already changed into his exorcist suit. Then, the Ni family sent a message saying that Ni Feng had recovered. Helene Vivian listened quietly, then continued to ask without changing her expression, did this happen after or before you saw the corpse? Of course it was before. I was too young at that time and had not learned any spells yet, so my memory was vague. I only knew that the Phoenix's premature death could not be known to the people of the Exorcist city, so the Ni family kept the news very tight. They said that they would only tell everyone when she was truly dead. However, what affected me the most was the words that Ni Hoot said to me while crying. It was as if he was certain that his sister would die. He was trembling all the time. I didn't expect Ni Fong to survive. It's a miracle. No, this is not a miracle at all. Hellion Vivian lowered her voice and lowered her eyes. Someone used a forbidden spell that should not have been used. Zhuge Yun's eyes widened. If it was not for Hellion Vivian giving him a look in time, he would have screamed out loud. Forbidden spell? What forbidden spell? Zhuge Yun tried his best to suppress his emotions. Even his volume was very low, but it still couldn't hide the obvious shock in his tone. Hellion Vivian looked at him with a faint gaze. Corpses, those corpses definitely wouldn't appear in the Ni family for no reason. They definitely have their uses. For example, using corpses to nurture corpses. As long as there is enough flesh and blood from corpses, the corpses can be as fresh as the living. Furthermore, the one being nurtured wouldn't even be discovered by the Reapers that her lifespan has come to an end, because the other corpses have become her best disguise. Brother Wei, you mean Ni Fong, she. Zhuge Yun didn't dare to think about his guess. Hellion Vivian was as calm as ever. Ni Fong should have died long ago. She's just a relatively fresh corpse now. That's impossible. If she's a corpse, where did her spiritual energy come from? Zhuge Yun knew that this was no small matter, and his first reaction was to deny it. Hellion Vivian looks back slowly. How can you be so sure that she has Reiki? Zhuge Yun paused. How can you be sure about Reiki? This is something that everyone can see. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said calmly, I remember that the exorcism book once mentioned that the accumulated corpse aura will also form a spirit, because the corpse itself is the last spirit of a human. If it's rich enough, it can also form the so-called Reiki. But this doesn't mean that Ni Fong is a corpse. Zhuge Yun touched his cold arms and felt an unprecedented chill from the bottom of his heart. Instinctively, he didn't want to accept this fact. However, Hellion Wei's tone was flat as she shattered his fantasy. A person who is full of spiritual aura will feel refreshed when you're near her. Do you feel refreshed all the way here? That's because we're in the cemetery. Zhuge Yun was still struggling. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. Look at Ni Hu. When Zhuge Yun heard Hellion Vivian's words, he really looked at Ni Hu. It said that children raised in places with rich Reiki are not bad. Since you have a good relationship with Ni Hu and both of you were born in an exorcist family, if the aura on his sister is really Reiki, do you think he would end up like this? He's a moron and a chinibu. Not only did he not learn exorcism, but he's also very insidious. At this point, Hellion Wei paused and continued, not only that, look at the faces of the other members of the Ni family. Every one of them is in a bad mood. This is not the attitude that an exorcist family should have. Previously, I also thought that it was because of the cemetery, but if that's the case, why are you fine? Why are Yiling and the others fine? At that moment, Zhuge Yun knew that what the person in front of him said was true. It was because it was true. That was why he found it hard to accept. They worshipped a corpse as the Phoenix Girl for more than 10 years. Not only did this corpse not reveal any flaws, but she was also loved and respected by the entire demon world. For some reason, Zhuge Yun felt that what laid before him was not just a corpse. It was a huge conspiracy. It was so deep that he did not know what the other party wanted to do. If Brother Wei did not mention this matter, he was afraid that he would never know about it. Not only him, but the entire exorcist city was kept in the dark. The entire exorcist tribe was invaded by Reiki. Did that not mean that the whole world would fall into the hands of demons? This was because ordinary humans couldn't tell the difference at all. Once something happened, all the royal families in the entire divine land would unite and send a notice to the exorcist city, asking them to exorcise the demons. This was a long-standing rule. But now, what is the Ni family trying to do? Don't they know the consequences of doing this? Zhuge Yun clenched his hands. He really did not dare to think about it. Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. Most of the people in the Ni family probably don't know about this because it seems like Ni who doesn't know about it. If even Ni who doesn't know about such a secret, it means that only the person who did it, such as Ni Biao, knows about it. However, no matter what his original intention was, it is obvious that the current situation is beyond his control. What do you mean? Zhuge Yun did not understand the last sentence. Hellion Vivian looked up at him. You came back earlier than us. Didn't you notice that Ni Biao is not here? Zhuge Yun was stunned. He did not notice that. He was so worried about the safety of the two people in front of him that he did not notice anything. Chapter 773. While we were talking, the two exorcists sitting on the left were chatting. They were talking about Ni Biao's disappearance. They said that they did not know what happened to him. Ni Biao seemed to be bewitched by something and walked away from the group. Hellion Vivian slowly shared the information she had just gathered. Zhuge Yun's jaw dropped. You can still hear other people's conversations when we're talking. Multitasking is a basic skill that a good observer must have. Hellion Weiwei absent-mindedly raised her head and looked at the figure that appeared at the entrance of the cave. Her eyes narrowed as she said, I'll hand over the investigation and observation to you another day. First, we need to figure out how each and every one of them, who were obviously already bewitched, returned safely. Zhuge Yun followed Hellion Weiwei's gaze and looked over. His brows suddenly furrowed into a bowl. The figure that came out of the cave was none other than Ni Biao, who had just swallowed the magical pill. He was still holding a section of the spider's leg in his hand. His eyes were looking at everyone, and he seemed to be in better spirits than when he was possessed. Father. Ni who did not expect his father to come back. He immediately jumped up and his face was full of joy. The disciples of the Ni family were also sincerely happy for Ni Biao's appearance. After all, they thought that their master would never come back. They did not expect a miracle to happen. Unlike the other disciples, Elderly was still cautious. Wait a moment, don't go over yet. Something was wrong with old Master Ni when he left. None of us can guarantee that he's still in his right state of mind. Hearing old Li's words, Ni Biao smiled. He raised the spider's leg in his hand and said, Old Li, don't worry. I'm very conscious now. Not only that, when I came back, I also destroyed the magic spider's nest. The magic spider that caused us so much trouble is now dead. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Really? When the other exorcists heard this, their eyes lit up and they surrounded Ni Biao. They could not help but exclaim in surprise, it's really the spider's leg, and this is definitely only a part of the spider's leg. Heavens, you actually killed that poison spider by yourself. Look at its limbs, its body is at least the size of 4 people, and its spider silk is so scary. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't be able to deal with it. It's not just you. I think that even if 3 or 4 of us work together, we might not be able to subdue this poisonous creature. Grandmaster Ni is still the best. I won't be able to achieve such a high level of exorcism in my entire life. Ni Biao enjoyed the compliments around him, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Sure enough, his decision was correct. Other than bringing back the spider's limbs, he had also done the right thing, which was to swallow the spider's magical pill. Otherwise, he would not have been able to locate the main group in such a short time. The spider's magic core had a natural positioning system, which made him like a fish in water in the ancient tomb. Those spider webs were no longer of any use to him. He could go wherever he wanted. Not only that, but he could also regain the love and respect of the exorcists. Once he obtained the Saraira, the entire exorcist city would belong to the Ni family. However, before Ni Biao could finish his beautiful dream, a clear and cold voice came from the crowd. "Are you sure you killed the poisonous spider?" Ni Biao followed the voice and looked over. When he saw Hellion Vivian, who was still alive, his pupils shook, and then he squinted again. "I brought the evidence. What do you think?" "What do I think?" Hellion Vivian smiled and walked over, her eyes shining. "I think when you passed by the spider's nest, the spider was already dead. You just took advantage of it and wanted to take credit for it." Hearing this, there was an uproar in the ancient tomb. Ni Biao's expression suddenly turned ugly. Ni Hu sneered, "What's going on? Brother Wei, are you jealous of my father? That's such a big poisonous spider. Other than my father, who else here can subdue it?" "Of course there is." Hellion Wei Wei's voice was very calm. "When the poisonous spider was still alive, it was going to eat me. It was my friend who appeared and saved me. At the same time, she removed all 8 of the spider's legs. When we left, the spider was still alive." When Ni Biao heard this, he laughed. "Hee hee, little brother Wei, your ability to make up stories is quite strong. If you really want this credit, this old man can give it to you. Why do you have to frame this old man?" When the exorcists heard Ni Biao's honest words, they did not doubt him and frowned at Hellion Vivian. However, after the previous incident, many exorcists would not jump to conclusions blindly. Only the disciple of the Ni family snorted, "Master, why do you care about him? Everyone knows that other than you, there is no one else who can subdue the poisonous spider. No matter what he says, you are the one who walked out with the spider's legs, not him." Hellion Vivian was not interested in explaining to them one by one. The most important thing now was to get the Saraira. However, she could not expose the Ni family's true colors if she started a fight right away. It would not be peaceful when she walked over. Not only did he take the spider's legs, he also ate the spider's magical pill. Beligaju's voice rang in her ears. His unique elegance had a hint of mockery in it. Can an exorcist still be considered an exorcist after eating the magical pill? Everyone turned to look at him when he said that. It was not only because of the content of his words, but also because this man had not spoken much since entering the tomb. No one expected him to say such shocking news. If His Highness did not mention it, Hellion Vivian would not have thought that Ni Biao would eat the magical pill. Only the Demon King could see the magical pill. At this moment, there was a qualitative change in the eyes of the exorcists. Even their eyes were shaking. Magical pill. How is that possible? That was a forbidden spell that was set by the ancestors. Exorcists could eat magical pills and capture holy objects. However, they could never touch the magical pill. Once they touched it, they would be invaded by evil energy. Although their magical power was boundless, they would become neither human nor ghost. Nonsense. Ni Hu looked around and shouted at Beligaju, "Why would my father eat the magical pill? With his reputation and magical power, he doesn't need to eat that kind of thing." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. What if he was already haunted by resentment before this? None of the exorcists here are haunted by resentment. How could my father be haunted by resentment? Ni Hu sneered, "This is getting more and more ridiculous." Chapter 774. You think it's ridiculous? Hellion Vivian's voice was faint, but she got straight to the point. Then how do you explain why your father lost his mind before he disappeared? Ni, whose throat seemed to be blocked in an instant, and his expression turned ugly. He really could not find any excuse to explain his father's reaction. Ni Biao's fingertips were also dyed black, but he was still trying his best to suppress it. At this time, he could not let anyone find out. Before he obtained the Sarira, he had to be the revered master exorcist of the generation. The people looked at the father and son of the Ni family, and their eyes were already filled with their own guesses. It was at this moment that Ni Feng, who was wearing a white veil, spoke up. Her voice was as gentle as ever, but this time, it was more targeted. Young Master Wei, when you're talking about my father, shouldn't you first explain why your companion could not only force the corpse puppet to retreat, but also cut through the wall? Such behavior makes it hard for people to believe that he's an ordinary human being. That's right. From the moment he entered the tomb until now, this Master Jew's behavior is indeed not like an ordinary human. Also, his movements are too fast. He flew out in the blink of an eye. The voices of guesses were like a tide, rushing towards them. Zhuge Yun explained anxiously, "What's so strange about that? Brother Zhu is very powerful. His martial qi is enough to resist our spiritual energy, isn't it? Brother Yun, although you said so, you can't be sure, right?" Ni Feng said with a smile, her voice leisurely, "I heard that on the day they appeared, they went straight to your Zhuge mansion without any identity verification. Whether they are exorcists or not is still to be verified, isn't it?" Ni Feng was indeed smart. The identity verification of an exorcist was not like other things that could be obtained as one wished. On the way here, His Highness did throw 2 exorcist certificates to Hellion Vivian, but those 2 certificates were snatched. His Highness used a more elegant word, borrowed. But when His Highness was beating people up, she would lean against the window and watch, including the 2 exorcists crying and saying that they would never step into the exorcist city again. It was really cool. Hellion Vivian erased the image in her mind and walked over. "Miss Ni, do you think that checking our exorcism certificates is more important than whether your father has taken the magic pill?" Of course, the 2 couldn't be compared. Even those without an exorcism certificate could enter the graveyard, although they would be condemned. However, for an exorcist to swallow a demonic pill was against the laws of nature. Ni Feng narrowed her eyes under the veil. Ni Biao laughed, "Since both of us are suspected, why don't we prove it to each other?" "Oh. How do you prove it?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. Since Ni Biao had swallowed the magical pill, he did not take the other party seriously. He maintained his gentle and hypocritical smile. "You suspect that I have swallowed the magical pill, but your companion is even more suspicious. Is he even human? Why don't we have a match and see who will be beaten back to their original form?" "Sure." Without waiting for Hellion Wei's reply, Bailey Jia Ju, who was standing behind her, slowly walked out. Not sure if it was because of the dim light, but his pair of pupils were clearly as black as ink, yet it made people feel as if there was gold swirling inside. At this moment, his smile was brighter than ever. The brilliance in his eyes made him look even more handsome. Perhaps no one understood why he was so happy. However, Hellion Vivian understood that His Highness finally had a legitimate reason to attack. He did not have to deliberately suppress himself and could unilaterally beat someone. Of course, he would be happy. She even suspected that His Highness had revealed that Ni Biao had swallowed the magical pill in order to lead to the current situation. After all, His Highness would only tell her this in the past, and then ask her to exchange something for it. For example, she would take the initiative to kiss him or something like that. For him to say it in public like this, of course, it was to achieve a certain effect. However, Ni Biao did not take it seriously. When he looked at the other party, his face was full of confidence. He was the best exorcist in the world. His spells were superb, and his spiritual energy was extraordinary. Originally, there were not many people in this world who could be his opponent. Now that he had the magical pill in his body, of course, his cultivation had broken through another level. In other words, in addition to his own abilities, he had also gained the magical power of a 1,000-year-old spider. Even if the young man in front of him had some skills, he would not be his opponent. Sooner or later, he would beat the other party to the ground. By then, even if the other party was a human, he could still do something. After all, he now had the magical pill. As long as the spider's silk penetrated the other party's brain, the man in front of him would become a spider. Of course, he did not think that this man would be an ordinary human. When he broke through the stone wall, Biao was sure that the other party would be a monster in human form. No matter how powerful a monster was, it would not be able to defeat him in demon form. Moreover, he had the exorcism spell to cover his body, so no one would see through his demonic nature. When the time came, not only would the suspicion on him be removed, but he would also get rid of a big problem. No matter how Biao thought about it, he felt that it was a good deal. In the past, Zhuge Yun did not understand the reason behind Biao's actions. However, after listening to Hellion Vivian's analysis, he immediately saw through Biao's intention. With a slightly childish voice, he said stubbornly, Biao, you are recognized as the #1 exorcist in the Exorcist City. Now, you have to fight with someone who has cultivated for God knows how many years later than you. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? That's true. Master Ni's magical power should be much higher than the other parties. It's more than just a lot more powerful. You haven't seen the scene of Master Ni capturing demons. When we passed by the forest on our way here, he even subdued a 2-meter-long snake demon. That spell was really powerful. Then this competition is indeed a little unfair. Biao did not want to see the duck that was already in his mouth fly away. Before Feng could give him an order, he smiled at Zhuge Yun, nephew, this is a special time. If we don't do this, no one will be able to tell who is the one being wronged, right? Or do you know something and don't want this young Master Zhu to accept the challenge? Zhuge Yun bit his thin lips and looked at Hellion Vivian. He thought to himself, why is Brother Wei not saying anything this time? Hurry up and stop him. Is he really going to let Brother Zhu take the risk? Hellion Vivian saw that the child was looking at her and raised her eyebrows in confusion. On the other hand, Zhuge Yun was still anxiously exchanging glances. On the other hand, Beligaju had already bitten off the gloves on his hands. His smile deepened, and he said in a low voice, let's start. Chapter 775. Under the illumination of the torch, the blood-stained green and white robes made Beligaju look taller, more handsome and fair. He looked more demonic and dangerous. Perhaps it was wrong to have such an illusion at this time, but Zhuge Yun did notice traces of evil on his companion at that moment. Hopefully, he was overthinking it. In fact, even if the other party was not human, he did not wish for them to die. Zhuge Yun did not wish for any harm to come to them. If it were not for them, he would not have been able to reach the ancient tomb. Even the other exorcists would not have been able to reach this place. Just the spider web alone would have killed many people. It was Brother Wei and Brother Zhu who stopped this from happening. As for the real problem, the one with evil intentions was from the Ni family. And now, Biao was simply eliminating the obstacle in his eyes. This time, Zhuge Yun was really unsure. Biao was his senior. Since young, his magical power and his father were ranked first in the Exorcist City. No exorcist had ever defeated them. If Brother Zhu was really a demon, he would definitely be beaten back to his original form. Zhuge Yun looked at the scene in front of him worriedly. The other exorcists also felt that this was a battle that they knew the ending before it even started. But as Ni Biao said, if it was not like this, it would be impossible to find out who was lying. Ni Biao had a smile on his face. He wanted to win with one strike. He put his palms together and used his body as a formation to mobilize the demonic core. In addition to the faintly moving spiritual energy, the two peachwood swords on his back flew above his head with an aura that could cut through everything. They formed countless sword rays that lit up the entire ancient tomb. It's the 1,000 returning swords. Oh my God! I never thought that I would be able to see such a profound exorcism technique in my life. The Ni family is really too powerful. Other than Grandmaster Ni, no one else in the world can use this move. I think that little brother on the ground is going to be in trouble. As Zhuge Yun listened to the discussions around him, he became even more nervous. At that moment, even his fingers were stiff. The 1,000 returning swords. Any demon would be tormented by the sword light and reveal their true form under such an exorcism Dao art. Ni Biao was too ruthless. He did not leave any leeway. He could not imagine what would happen to Brother Zhu later. He strongly hoped that his opponent was a human. That way, he would not lose so miserably. Unlike Zhuge Yun's gloominess, the Ni family was filled with cheers. Ni Hu glanced at Hellion Vivian proudly. You said that my father would be invaded by resentment, but now you're dumbfounded. It seemed like a long time had passed, but in reality, it was only a dozen seconds. After the formation, Ni Biao opened his eyes abruptly. Then, he clenched his fists, starting from his thumb and then his index finger. His eyes were filled with a viciousness that did not belong to an exorcist. Lin, Bing, Do, Shi, Jia, Shen, Lai, Qian. Exorcism. Following Ni Biao's hand gestures, the two mahogany swords flew toward Bailey Jia Ju fiercely, along with countless sharp edges. No! Zhuge Yun immediately closed his eyes. He did not want to see the outcome of this battle. Just when all the exorcists thought that Beligaju would reveal his true form, a loud bang was heard. As if they had encountered a strong obstacle, the sword stopped 10 centimeters away from Beligaju. As if they were resisting, sparks flew from the friction. Zhuge Yun immediately opened his eyes when he heard the sound. He saw Beligaju standing in the middle. His green robe and long hair were clearly intertwined. The fluttering sound came from his left sleeve when he raised it. Those swords were really blocked by him with just a raise of his hand. Not only that, even the real mahogany swords were trembling from his aura. Creak. Along with the crisp sound, the mahogany swords finally could not take it anymore. Cracks appeared on the scabbard one after another. Beligaju looked at the swords in front of him with a faint smile. His eyes were filled with the unique mockery of a demon. It was also the 9 symbolic mantra, but compared to the effect produced by a stupid woman's recitation, this level of spiritual energy was simply too weak. Bang! Beligaju swung his hand with a smile. The mahogany swords changed their original direction and retreated back to Ni Biao. The counterforce caused Ni Biao to take 2 heavy steps back. As if shocked by the sudden counterattack, Ni Hu did not manage to retract his smile. Instead, his lips turned pale and he shouted, "Father!" Ni Biao did not expect his return of 10,000 swords to be broken. Not only that, he reached out to touch his long hair that was falling down. His fingernails rubbed his face until it bled. At that moment, he realized how close he was to death. If it was not for the magical pill in his body, which increased his speed by more than 2 times, the mahogany swords would have pierced through his head. How could this person be so powerful? Ni Biao could not believe it. As he lowered his head, the black gas in his eyes began to surge. Everyone looked at Beligaju who made his move. However, he only smiled faintly and played with the remaining mahogany swords. Looks like you're done with your tricks. Then it's my turn. Hee, you're the one who activated the mechanism in the tunnel, right? Unlike Hellion Vivian's meticulous thinking, Beligaju was the kind of cleverness that left people with no way out. When they heard the news, all the exorcists were stunned. Even Ni, who widened his eyes. Ni Biao did not expect his actions to be discovered. His first reaction was guilt, but his second reaction was murderous intent. As long as he did not have a chance to speak, everything would be solved. You're about to die, and you still want to frame me. Ni Biao sneered. He did not know that because of Beligaju, the resentment in his heart had resonated with the magical pill in his body. As a result, his fingertips began to be stained black. Since the return of 10,000 swords could not kill this brat, then he would use the magical pill. Thinking of this, Ni Biao's eyes flashed and he jumped up. Using his spiritual energy as a cover, he turned his palm into a claw and clawed at Beligaju's neck. No one could resist the invasion of the demonic nature. Just turn into a demon. If Ni Biao knew Beligaju's identity, he would never have made such a stupid decision. Perhaps, when facing the 9 symbolic words, His Highness would be worried that his aura would leak out. But when facing the demons, he was the king that all the demons in the world had to bow down to. How could he be afraid of the demonic aura? Chapter 776. Beligaju smiled faintly. He was as courteous as a gentleman, but he gave off an indescribable evil vibe. Molten gold leaked out from the corner of his long and deep eyes. Before Ni Biao could get close to him, he straightened the broken sword in his hand. His action was very elegant, but his eyes were filled with hostility. A swoosh was heard. Ni Biao's palm was pierced through just like that. Ah! A painful cry resounded throughout the entire palace. Ni Biao was in so much pain that he could not speak. Bright red blood spurted out from his palm like a fountain. He looked at Beligaju in disbelief. His eyes were shaking. How could this be? Why did this person seem to be immune to the demonic energy? The energy that he released did not affect him at all. What kind of monster was this person? Ni Biao reached out to press on his aching hand. Large beads of cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Faintly, the magic core in his body became even more unstable. Be quiet! Ni Biao suddenly shouted. Ni who was so frightened that he wanted to step forward, turned pale. He swallowed his saliva with great difficulty. No one knew who Ni Biao was yelling at. Beligaju smiled as he took out a white handkerchief to wipe his hand. He raised his good-looking eyebrows. As expected, you haven't had time to digest it. It was different from the indifference and nobility seen during the day. Now, even the smile at the corner of his mouth was tinged with a faint evil aura. Throwing away the white handkerchief, Bailey Jiaju narrowed his eyes. His bony little finger was wearing a little ring. The black gem on the ring was shining with an evil light that matched him extremely well. It was eager to devour something. Ah! Ni Biao screamed again. His injured hand began to beat his chest. I asked you to be quiet. Quiet! How could this be? The demonic core had perfectly integrated into his body, and he had already defeated the demonic nature it produced. Why did it have to come out at this time to mess with him? Ni Biao straightened his neck. The green veins on his neck looked like they were about to burst open. One by one, they spread to his lower jaw. Beligaju's smile grew wider and wider. His pupils constricted. Ni Biao fell to the ground, rolling back and forth in pain. The silver spider silk could no longer be held back. It shot out from his palm and pierced through Ni, who was standing in front of him. Ni-Hu's leg was injured, but that was not the most painful thing for him. The most painful thing was that his father had grown tentacles that only poisonous spiders would have. Impossible. This is impossible. Ni-Hu roared as tears streamed down his face. It shouldn't be like this. That man should be the one to become a monster. Why? Why was it his venerable father? Beligaju couldn't care less about the pain of the Ni family's father and son. This was the situation he wanted. Anyone who had harmed that little thing would have to bear the consequences of their actions. Young Master Ni, you don't seem to believe what you're seeing. Beligaju was like an understanding gentleman. He reached out and grabbed Ni-Hu's collar, then come closer and take a look. No. I don't want to. Ni-Hu had never been as scared as he was now. His father, the father he respected the most, was curled up like a spider. Beligaju's eyes were smiling, but his tone was cold. Did I say that I gave you a choice? What are you trying to do? Move me away from here. Liang Zi, Ah Mu, are both of you blind? Why aren't you helping me? Ni-Hu screamed. When he turned his head, he saw the expressions of the people around him. Their fear was mixed with a strong sense of disgust. All eyes were on his father, who was almost deformed. At that moment, Ni-Hu gave up struggling. He stood there in a daze, his eyes filled with pain. Biao lowered his head and looked at his hand. When he saw the huge tentacle, he broke down. He had lived a glorious life. Wherever he went, he was worshipped and respected. But now, he was showing his ugliest side in front of the world. Compared to the physical pain, the most unbearable thing for him was the shocked and disgusted looks. Biao wished that he could bite everyone to death. The huge tentacle began to move, accompanied by the transparent poisonous spider silk. Be careful. Zhuge Yun shouted. He took out his mahogany sword to defend himself. The exorcists were also ready to fight. However, before they could make a move, Biao was unable to crawl forward. This was because one of his tentacles was tightly gripped in Beligaju's hand. That person did not seem to use much strength. He was even wearing a black glove. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised. Hey, where are you going? We agreed to have a friendly match. Don't be a wet blanket. No matter what, Biao was now a half-human, half-spider. His body swelled up and was more than 3 times bigger than before. But he could not break free from this man's control. He had underestimated him. Biao was furious. He wanted to fling Beligaju away and use his other leg to penetrate the man's throat. Biao was still too naive. If he knew how His Highness beat up the poisonous spider, he would not have taken it for granted. Although, His Highness always beat people up in the same way. For example, right now, he was holding the original leg in his palm with one hand and using the other hand to block. He spun Biao's body. Then, his slender long leg kicked upwards. Crack! Biao's ribs were broken. Crack! With another sound, Biao's legs were completely crushed. Without any restraints, Bailey Jiaju was undoubtedly terrifying. Even if he was smiling gracefully at this moment, it couldn't stop his next even more ruthless action. He did not give Biao any chance to catch his breath. When he fell, Bailey Jiaju grabbed his other limbs and said, "Is it fun to press the mechanism? Is it fun to watch the person in front of you disappear? Then I'll make it more comfortable for you." Bam! It was a side kick with the wind. Biao's huge body flew towards the direction of the stone wall. Along with the rumbling sound of the stone breaking, blood gushed out from his throat. Bailey Jiaju pointed at his forehead in distress and said, "That's why I said that spiders are really dirty." Ugh! Ni Biao felt that his body was no longer his own. Even his tongue was bleeding from being bitten by him. He could not speak normally. Chapter 777. Beligaju did not let him go. He leaped into the air with his feet in the air, grabbed Ni Biao's collar and pushed him forward. Due to the collision, his back was bleeding from the sharp rocks. Under the immense pressure, Ni Biao could not move at all. But Bailey Jiaju only slightly curved the corners of his mouth, and with a voice that only the two of them could hear, he slowly laughed next to his ear, like a demon in a dream. "Do you know why I can clearly finish you off with one kick, but I still want you to make the first move? Since this is your first time being a demon, I'll tell you. Because of the depletion of spiritual energy, it's easier for me to show my original form, just like how you look now." Upon hearing this, Ni Biao's pupils constricted. Woo! Woo woo woo! You're not a demon. You're a demon. Yes, I'm a demon. Beligaju smiled faintly and exerted force. His cold eyes turned into a golden light, a demon that can easily pull out your demon core. Bang! There was another sound of stone shattering. At that moment, Ni Biao was filled with unprecedented regret. His opponent did it on purpose. He purposely let him jump out to compete and then show his current ugly state. However, even a demon would not be unscathed under the 1,000 ancestral swords. Unless this person's demonic nature was strong enough to suppress the light of Buddha. Is there such a demon in this world? Ni Biao could not help but ask himself as his body fell. However, he did not have the strength to answer as his limbs were paralyzed. In the stone cave, no one would hear their conversation. That meant that no one would discover the man's identity. Ni Biao finally realized that he was done for. He was on the verge of death and was only left with his senses. Zhuge Yun looked at the penetrated stone wall with his mouth wide open. He asked Hellion Vivian in a daze, "Is this still considered a competition? Isn't this a one-sided beating? How did Brother Zhu manage to lift Ni Biao so easily? That's a spider." Hellion Wei Wei's expression was languid as she said slowly, "He once went to the sea and caught a dragon with one hand. He even pulled out the dragon's tendons and carried it back to feed it to his younger brother." She had heard this gossip from Shao Qi. Back then, she had always felt that His Highness, who could do this kind of thing with a clear conscience, was not human at all. "Zhuge Yun, tell me secretly, he really isn't human, right?" It was rare for Zhuge Yun to get a definite answer. Hellion Wei Wei looked at the expectant gazes of the exorcists around her and lied calmly, "No, he is indeed a human. However, he has eaten too many dragons, that's why he has such great strength." As they were talking, the noble and elegant His Highness returned leisurely with a half-human, half-spider in his hand. He smiled apologetically, "I'm sorry, I was too good at fighting just now and forgot to kill the demon. I need to leave it to a professional exorcist." As he spoke, he looked at the pale-faced Ni Hu and smiled. "Young Master Ni, now that we've confirmed that your father has become a demon, as the Ni family that maintains the righteous path in the world, Master Ni, I'll leave it to you to place righteousness before family." Ugh! Ni Biao thought that this was the worst thing that could happen to him. Now, this man was asking his son to kill him. Did he want the Ni family to be completely destroyed? "Master Ni, you don't have to thank me. I know that people like you don't want to harm the world, right? Dying in the hands of your closest kin is a relief for you." Beligaju was very considerate when he squatted down and looked into Ni Biao's eyes. Ni Biao was so angry that his internal organs started to hurt. Unfortunately, his tongue was broken and he could not say a word. However, Beligaju laughed at this moment, or should I say, this kind of thing should be left to Lady Ni, the reincarnation of the Phoenix Girl. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Ni Feng. Unlike Ni who, she reacted quickly. Her gentle voice sounded like she was crying, "Father, you've disappointed me. How could you swallow the magical pill? How can you lead the people to defend justice and ward off evil?" Ni Biao, who was smart, immediately understood the other meaning behind her words. His daughter. The daughter that he had raised with all his heart, was she planning to abandon him? Since things have come to this, I can only enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Ni Feng stopped talking and condensed her fingers. Without giving Ni Biao any time to react, she directly locked onto his throat. The pain of being on the verge of death made Ni Biao reach out his hand in despair. However, all he saw was the man's devilish smile. He seemed to be saying, "This is the price you have to pay for hurting the most important thing to me." The person under his feet was no longer breathing. Beligaju gently clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, "So this is the reincarnation of the legendary Phoenix Girl. She even killed her own father. What an eye-opener." The first one to react was not Ni Feng but Ni Hu. He rushed to Ni Feng and grabbed her arm as he cried, "Why? Sister, why did you do this? That's father." Ni Feng took in a deep breath. Only then did she realize that she had fallen into a trap. A perfect chain of traps set by the other party. No, she could not panic. "Do you think I wanted to do this?" Ni Feng burst into tears and coughed violently. She raised her hand and punched herself repeatedly. "Look at what father has become. He was an open-minded person all his life, but he ended up like this because he ate the magical pill by mistake. I did this to set him free." Ni whose eyes were red. Sister, I've wronged you. Don't be like this. You're the Phoenix Girl, you have to do this. I understand." Hearing their cries, the exorcists' hearts were moved. Obviously, they believed Ni Feng's words. Ni Feng lowered her eyes and looked at the people around her. She cried even more weakly. At this moment, Helian Wei Wei, who had been silent all this while, opened her mouth faintly. "If you only wanted to free him, you could have directly taken the magical pill from his body and used spiritual aura to heal him. You could have also directly used the demon-slaying Buddhist incantation to eliminate the demonic nature in his body. However, you didn't even hesitate for a moment before you grabbed his throat with one hand and killed him directly, not even leaving him with half a breath of air. Young Lady Ni, the person you attacked is your father, not some random passerby. No matter how immature your younger brother is, he still has some humanity in him. As for you, you just want to quickly solve this matter and maintain your reputation as the Phoenix Girl." Chapter 778. When Ni Feng heard Helian Vivian's words, her crying suddenly stopped. Even her outstretched fingers became a little stiff, as if she had been wronged to the extreme. "Young Master Wei, you were the one who asked me to do it, and now you are the one who is blaming me. Everyone saw that my father had completely transformed into a demon. Only by destroying both him and the demon can we ensure that he will not be devoured by the remaining demon. Even if we remove the demon core from his body, no one can guarantee that his blood will not be infected. My brother really couldn't do it, because no one knows better than us siblings how difficult it is to do it. I don't want my brother to bear this pain. I know he can't bear it, so let me bear it. Young Master Wei, you can say that I have no humanity, or that I just want to maintain my reputation. I will accept it. As long as you don't let my brother suffer, you can say whatever you want." Miss Ni. Elderly couldn't bear to see her coughing until she was out of breath. He turned his head and said to Helian Vivian, "Little brother Wei, you have gone too far. The Phoenix Girl has always been merciful, and she is definitely not like what you see on the surface. In fact, this is all because of a misunderstanding. Although Miss Ni did it, just like what she said, she feels worse than anyone else. When the exorcists heard Elder Li's words, they looked at the Ni siblings who were hugging each other and Ni Biao who was lying dead on the ground. They couldn't imagine that such a good family would end up in such a mess. They felt pity for them. Let's just forget about this. After all, it was a close call. Someone advised, thinking that this matter should end here. Unexpectedly, Hellion Vivian spoke calmly. If you can't remove the demon core, you can still use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation. This Buddhist incantation is not like removing the demon core. Once it is used, it is enough to eliminate all the demons in a human's body, right? Or is it that? Speaking to this point, Wei Wei paused for a moment, a trace of a smile yet not a smile flashed through her beautiful eyes. You simply can't use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation. A phoenix girl who can't use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation, isn't she fake? This sentence was practically a blatant provocation. Hellion Vivian had said from the beginning that she didn't have time to waste with them. Everyone, including Ni Hu, was stunned by Hellion Vivian's last question. His first reaction was to rush over and yell at her. However, he was not the slightest bit closer to that person. This was because Beligaju had already tidied up his clothes and stood beside Hellion Vivian. At that moment, Ni Hu felt like he was looking at two people who worked together seamlessly. Although one was handsome and cold while the other was lazy and gentle, there was an irresistible glint in their eyes. His reaction was completely different from before. Ni Feng's entire body froze. Her eyes and arms drooped down as if something was about to emerge from her eyes. Old Li was the one who didn't believe it the most. Little brother Wei, do you know what you are saying? How can the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl be questioned? Old Li, Hellion Vivian's voice became clear and cold. I know you have a different gratitude towards the Phoenix girl because she appeared in your dreams before. However, have you ever thought that blind worship can sometimes harm you and those who are influenced by your intuition? If Miss Ni is really the Phoenix girl, then everyone will be happy. But what if she isn't? Have you ever thought about the consequences? Someone is pretending to be your benefactor and using the name of the Phoenix girl to do whatever she wants. If the real Phoenix girl finds out about this, how do you think she will feel? Perhaps it was because of the righteous aura of the person in front of him, or maybe it was because the way she looked at him was too oppressive. At that moment, Old Li was filled with uncertainty. Yes, what if the other party was fake? Wouldn't that be using the name of the Phoenix girl to control them? The main thing was just like what the other party had said. If the benefactor wasn't Miss Ni, then, would the real benefactor feel cold and helpless towards his current actions? Because he had been protecting Ni Feng all this while. However, he really couldn't give up his persistence and belief for so many years. What evidence do you have to prove that Miss Ni isn't the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl? Elderly hesitated for a while before asking. The Buddhist exorcism incantation doesn't count. Lady Ni's body is very weak now. If she were to use it once, she would need at least half a year to recover. I can't allow anyone to take this risk. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. This was the most direct method, but since Old Li had rejected it, she could only take another approach. I do have evidence, but we need to investigate carefully. Hellion Vivian's voice was calm as if she was telling a story. First, I'll tell everyone a secret about the Ni family. 7 years ago, there was a secret in the backyard of the Ni family. It was done by Master Ni. I'm sure young Master Ni has seen it. No, I haven't seen it. I've never seen it before. Ni Hu shouted and covered his head. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. It doesn't seem like you haven't seen it before. However, it's okay if young Master Ni doesn't admit it, because there's another person here who has seen it before, and that's young Master Yun. Zhuge Yun nodded and repeated the words that he had told Helian Wei seriously. At that time, Master Ni used the excuse that there was a monster in there and didn't allow anyone to go near it. He also didn't allow young Master Yun to tell anyone. Helian Vivian's voice was calm. In fact, I think everyone should understand the reason why he didn't allow anyone to go near it. As soon as Helian Vivian finished speaking, an exorcist immediately exclaimed and murmured in disbelief, "He's using a corpse to raise a corpse. Ni Biao wants to use a corpse to raise a corpse." As soon as the words "using a corpse to raise a corpse" were uttered, it immediately caused an uproar in the surroundings. However, Helian Wei turned a blind eye to this and continued, "That's right, it's using a corpse to raise a corpse. It was recorded in the Forbidden Exorcism spell that in order to activate this spell, the surroundings must be filled with corpse aura. Of course, what I want to say is not only that, but also that young Lady Ni's room was right next to these corpses. What's wrong with that?" Ni Hook shouted angrily, "Since it's my father's doing, what does it have to do with my sister? My sister is pitiful enough. She's been in poor health ever since she was young because she was the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl. Do you have to blame all my father's mistakes on her?" Helian Vivian glanced at him and continued his words calmly, "Since your sister is in poor health, she should be placed somewhere else instead of staying so close to these corpses, unless the person your father wants to use to raise a corpse is your sister." Chapter 779. Helian Vivian's words were like a bomb that was suddenly dropped. Everyone felt as if their blood had frozen. They didn't even dare to look at the Ni family now. Their heads were all swollen. Only Ni who was more clear-headed than ever. "What nonsense are you talking about? That's impossible." Ni whose legs could not move. He bared his teeth at Helian Vivian and roared. There was a strong fear in the depths of his heart. This fear made him unwilling to admit the truth even though he knew who it was. Helian Vivian looked at him with clear eyes. "Young Master Ni, you must know better than anyone how the Ni family survived that year. You ran to the Zhuge family to complain to your friends that your sister was about to die. You even prepared a shroud and a coffin for her, didn't you? However, the next day, Ni Feng inexplicably recovered. No one knew how she recovered. In fact, she didn't recover. Instead, she came back to life and used enough corpse aura to prolong her life." Wei. Ni who pointed at her and gritted his teeth, "You're talking nonsense. Do you believe that I'll show you the power of our Ni family right now?" Helian Vivian raised her eyebrows. "Young Master Ni, you have such a big reaction every time. Do you want me to guess that the reason you cried back then was not because your sister was about to die, but because you saw that she was already dead, right?" All of a sudden, Ni who froze on the spot as if someone had pressed his acupoints. Because of the memories of his childhood, his face was pale and drained of all color. Ni Feng let out a long sigh. "Young Master Wei, you've been talking for a long time. These are all your guesses. You even misled my brother step by step. Do you want everyone to think that I'm not the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl? Back then, my body was indeed very weak, but based on little brother Yun's childhood memories of playing hide and seek, young Master Wei said that my father created the corpses so that he could use them to nurture more zombies. In reality, zombies were rampant in the world back then, so my father caught many of them and brought them back to the residence. He was waiting for them to be burned down in a big fire so that no one could enter. The reason why I stayed next to the residence was because my father had instructed me to look after the courtyard and not let anyone enter. I never thought that it would cause little brother Yun to misunderstand. As for why I suddenly became better, it was all because of the spirit chi in my body. Young Master Wei might not know, but the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl is just like the Phoenix. They all need to be reborn, and I was like that back then. After hearing Ni Feng's explanation, Ni Hu finally calmed down. The others were also pondering the same thing. Miss Ni is right. It was indeed the year when zombies ran rampant in the world. So it's not raising a corpse. Perhaps young Master Yun saw wrongly. After all, he was still young at that time. According to his description, he accidentally broke into the courtyard and did not react when he saw so many zombies. He was frightened and mistook them for a group of corpses. Zhuge Yun really did not want to believe what he had heard. What was clearly an ironclad matter was completely changed after Ni Feng's explanation. His handsome face flushed red. I didn't see wrongly. Zombies wouldn't be so fresh. Little brother Yun, so many years have passed. Can you be sure that you didn't see wrongly? What's more, you said it yourself. It was already late at that time. You were also shocked at that time. When people are scared, cough cough, especially children, it's very easy for them to have illusions. Coupled with their own imagination, the result might be completely different from the reality. Ni Feng coughed lightly as she spoke. Although her voice was gentle, her words refuted all of the evidence provided by Zhuge Yun. The exorcists looked at each other, each of them deep in thought. Zhuge Yun was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. How can a woman like you reverse right and wrong? Little brother Yun, I've always known that you have a bad opinion of the Ni family. Ni Feng lowered her eyes. Her back looked even weaker due to the light cough, but an illusion is an illusion, it can't be used as evidence. You. Zhuge Yun still wanted to say something but was stopped by Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian looked at him and smiled. Young Master Yun, let me teach you something to deal with this kind of acting. Don't be anxious in the future. Just think carefully about her words and see if there are any contradictions. Then. Hellion Vivian slowly curled her lips, full of evil. You'll be able to hit the nail on the head. Zhuge Yun did not understand. Hellion Vivian let out a long sigh. Let me do it, I'm your idol after all. I only worship the real Phoenix girl. Zhuge Yun muttered softly, although I really want to be you now, I still worship the real Phoenix girl the most. Hellion Vivian listened to him and smiled. She did not say anything more to Zhuge Yun. On the other hand, the bigger fetus in Hellion Vivian's stomach proudly lifted its chin and said in a cool and soft voice, how slow is this young exorcist's reaction? Mother has already said it herself, he still can't guess that Mother is the Phoenix girl he worships. Humans are really stupid. Of course, they can't be compared to Brother. The smaller fetus responded weakly, even its eyes were smiling. The bigger fetus was very pleased with the smaller fetus's words. It lowered its head and kissed the smaller fetus, moving away a little so that the smaller fetus could perceive the situation outside. At this moment, Hellion Vivian looked directly at Ni Feng, who was trying to pretend to be calm. She said again, Miss Ni, according to what you said, you were seriously ill at that time. Then I'd like to ask you, how could a person who was seriously ill and bedridden be assigned to guard the zombies? That's right, how could a person who could not even get out of bed be able to deal with zombies? It was simple. All of a sudden, all of Ni Feng's words became shaky and unsteady. The exorcists were not stupid, some of them understood immediately. They looked at Ni Feng suspiciously from all directions. Ni Feng's hands were tightly clenched into a ball, her teeth were almost bleeding. She did not expect that just one sentence would be used against her. Normally, people would not analyze every word to see if there were any contradictions in her words. Where did this person with the surname Wei come from? Of course, Ni Feng did not know what kind of training the person standing in front of her received in the 21st century and how meticulous her thoughts were. She did not get her lawyer's license for nothing. Hellion Vivian looked at her and slowly added the most fatal blow. Since Miss Ni mentioned the spiritual aura in your body, then we should study it carefully and see if it is real spiritual aura. Chapter 780. Upon hearing this, Ni Feng's entire body trembled and her back trembled. Ni Hu also raised his head, his eyes shaking. What do you mean by that? Are you saying that the aura in my sister's body isn't spiritual energy? Young Master Ni is quite smart at times, Hellion Vivian said as she took out the candle from Zhuge Yun's body. Ni Hu could hear the sarcasm in her words and sneered. You've really put in a lot of effort just to frame my sister. You even made up a lie that it's not spiritual energy. Everyone here can feel the spiritual energy in my sister's body. Brother Wei, don't say that it's not there just because you're not talented enough to feel it, okay? Miss Ni does have an aura in her body. Hellion Vivian raised her head and looked at Ni Hu. However, the aura in her body isn't spiritual energy, it's corpse aura. Since Elderly said that Miss Ni's body is weak and we can't risk letting her use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation, let's use a simpler method to test it. As she said this, Hellion Vivian smiled at Elderly. Elderly is most familiar with this method. Those who follow the rules would light a candle and place it in the southeast corner before opening the coffin. Then, they would begin to loot the coffin. If the candle goes out, they would have to put the coffin back in its original place, respectfully kowtow 3 times, and quickly leave empty-handed. That's why there's the saying that the lantern should not go out even when the rooster crows. The reason why the candle goes out is because the corpse aura emitted by the corpse is too strong. If it continues, it will be dangerous. If it's spiritual energy or life energy, it won't affect the candle at all. Now, the candle with the yellow talisman has the same effect on Miss Ni's aura. As Hellion Vivian said this, she took out a yellow talisman from one of the exorcists and wrapped it around the candle. Then, she lit it up and handed it to Ni Feng with a smile. Miss Ni, how is it? Do you want to bet on whether the candle will go out or stay lit after you bring it over? Ni Feng did not reach out to take the candle. Instead, she stared at Hellion Vivian with gloomy eyes. The expression on her face changed little by little, and even her breathing became heavier. The uncomfortable muffled sound was like the sound of a corpse lying in a coffin, pressing down on everyone's heart. You're really... Elderly, who was the closest to Ni Feng, trembled when he heard the voice. His lips were extremely pale as he swallowed the words, a corpse. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha, I really didn't expect to be discovered. Ni Feng lowered her head and laughed. There was a hint of dullness in her soft voice, revealing an indescribable sense of eeriness. But even if we're discovered, it's not a big deal because it's all too late, ha ha ha. All the disciples of the Ni family covered their ears with their hands. They did not know why, but they felt that the strange sound was coming from their bodies. Black gas began to spread from the corners of their eyes, eroding their entire eyeballs. When they looked up again, some of the exorcists seemed to have changed their appearance. Their eyes were hollow, and half of their faces were bulging with veins, as if they were congested with blood. What's going on? Zhuge Yun roared. He was the first to pull out the peachwood sword. The remaining 6 or 7 people followed him, wanting to point their scabbards at the mutated exorcists. However, they were too difficult to deal with. Not only were they agile, but their movements were also familiar. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws at some of the exorcists. They could no longer be called humans. They were a bit like monkeys, baring their fangs and biting the shoulders of the other exorcists. One of them wanted to attack Hellion Vivian, but before he could get close to her, he was thrown 2 meters away by a figure that suddenly appeared in front of him. His Highness moved quickly like a black shadow. With Hellion Vivian as the starting point, he rapidly changed his position. Before anyone could see clearly how he kicked the first monkey away, he had already stepped on the face of the third monkey with his long legs. His figure was graceful, smooth, and beautiful. The unmutated exorcists who were standing at the side were stunned. Helene Vivian did not look at the monkeys. Instead, she focused her attention on an iPhone. Her long and narrow eyes suddenly narrowed. She raised her left arm abruptly with a silver handgun in her hand. With a distance of 7 meters, she aimed at Ni Feng's head without any deviation. Bang! If it was not for a white-robed figure blocking her, her shot would have blown Ni Feng's head off. Young master! Ni Feng cried out involuntarily when she saw the blood spurting out. The figure did not hesitate at all. He held her with his injured hand and looked at Helene Vivian with his ink-black eyes. With a tap of his heel, he disappeared into the endless darkness. Then, a dense crowd of exorcists blocked the entrance of the cave. Each of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws like man-eating zombies. Helene Vivian did not hesitate. She fired 5 out of the 6 bullets. Except for the first shot, every shot hit the monkeys in the head. A headshot. A row of them fell down uniformly. The last shot hit 3 of them in a row. When blood splashed out, the exorcists were completely dumbfounded. That's it. That's it. What's that in Brother Wei's hand? Bang! 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 It can kill all the enemies with just a few bangs. Helene Vivian did not respond to their gazes. She reached out and pulled the zombies, blocking the entrance away. She looked at the endless darkness and narrowed her eyes. That's not the direction of the Saraira. One of them is injured and the other is a corpse. Without the protection of the spiritual aura of a real exorcist, they can't get close to the main coffin. If they can't get close to the main coffin, they can't get the Saraira. Elderly wiped the blood off his face and said in fear, "That direction just now, don't tell me they want to get that thing." Helene Vivian looked at him and put away the silver spear in her hand. Her voice was indifferent. "What's that thing?" "Elderly, you seem to have hidden a lot of things from us. Now that things have come to this, it's time to let everyone know how many secrets there are in this tomb competition. It's not that I want to hide it from you." Elderly smiled bitterly. "I didn't expect that the Ni family would dare to lie about the reincarnation of the Phoenix Girl, so I told them everything about the tomb. In this tomb, other than the Saraira, there's another thing that can resurrect the dead. But it's different from the Saraira. Once that thing is used, it will awaken all the sleeping demons in the tomb. At that time, we might all die in the ancient tomb." Chapter 781. In other words, they gave up on the Saraira and chose to look for the thing you mentioned. Helene Vivian's thoughts were running fast even at this moment. Oldly nodded. "It's a magical mirror that can pass through the gate of life and death. Once it leaves the mausoleum, the path to the underworld will be opened. After the mausoleum falls, it will be the exorcist city's turn. The exorcist city cannot fall. Once the exorcist city is gone, the divine exorcism seal will be completely destroyed. By then, the demons will run rampant and the 6 paths of reincarnation will be destroyed. Humans will have no way out." Upon hearing this, Zhuge Yun could not help but cry out, "Why is there such a thing in the mausoleum?" Old Li covered his face with his hands after hearing Zhuge Yun's words. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have told anyone about this." "Old Li, you don't have to blame yourself." Helene Vivian's eyes were very calm. "Even if you didn't tell them, they already knew about the existence of this mirror in the mausoleum. Someone wanted to revive the previous Ni Feng, so of course, they would know everything. If they couldn't get the Saraira, they would choose the second method. This is also the real reason why the Ni family wanted to enter the mausoleum. As she spoke, she looked at the exorcists. Young Master Yun stopped everyone because of this. However, there were many things that he didn't know and couldn't explain to everyone. Now that the truth is in front of everyone, it's useless to pursue the past. I will get the Saraira. As for the rest, soon, all the demons in the mausoleum will be revived. Whether we can get out of here alive depends on everyone's cooperation. Every exorcist nodded solemnly. Only Ni who did not move. He looked as if he was scared out of his wits as he stared blankly at the corpse beside his feet. He was the only one in the Ni family who did not mutate. However, it was because he was conscious that he was in so much pain. How could this be? It shouldn't be like this. Ni who burst into tears. The wound on his leg and the bite on his neck made him look like he was on the verge of death. Hellion Vivian had no time to care about him. She had never been a saint. When she was about to walk over, he grabbed her trousers. My sister can't be a corpse. There must be a mistake somewhere. Maybe she's like my father, eating a devil pill, which is why she became like this. No. Hellion Vivian knew that Ni who only wanted an explanation at this moment. She looked at him and said in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, but loud enough for everyone to hear, she was a corpse from the beginning. Even your father ate a magical pill because of her. Maybe you didn't realize that the spiritual aura on her body was a disguise because of your father. She absorbed your father's spiritual aura. Your father knew that using a corpse to raise a corpse would cause a lot of resentment, but he still did it for the sake of the entire exorcist city. He allowed you to bully the Zhuge family and joined forces with other families to suppress the Zhuge family. It was all for the same reason. He wanted to monopolize everything and did not want his ambitions to be known. Once the exorcists found out about his intentions, not only would they not follow him into the tomb, they would also try their best to stop him. Of course, your father was also used by others. He really thought that he could get all the power he wanted by obtaining the Saraira. In fact, your sister only wanted to use your father to complete the heaven-defying resurrection technique. Once the Saraira was in her hands, your father's death would also come. I don't believe you. You're lying. Our Ni family has only had one son for several generations. There has never been a female child. Once a female child is born, she will definitely be the reincarnation of the Phoenix Girl. The Phoenix Girl came from our Ni family. Because of this, my father specially named my sister Ni Feng because she is the Phoenix Girl. Do you know anything about the Phoenix Girl? She would never do what you said. Ni who was obviously shocked to the point of a mental breakdown. Hellion Vivian, who was about to take a step forward, paused. If that's the case, then I'll tell you. The Phoenix Girl has never been reincarnated in your Ni family. That was just a lie your ancestors told for the sake of benefits. In an instant, the entire ancient tomb fell into a silence that had never been seen before. Ni who widened his eyes in disbelief. Old Li also looked at Hellion Vivian beside him. Little brother Wei, this old man is not doubting your words. This old man just wants to ask, how do you know that the Ni family lied? That was hundreds of years ago. Old Li will naturally know when we get the Saraira. Hellion Vivian did not hesitate and walked into the last cave. Zhuge Yun quickly followed and said with a tone full of admiration, Brother Wei, you're really amazing. You can actually make that woman reveal her true form with a candle. Is there such a method in the Book of Exorcism? Why haven't I seen it before? No. Hellion Wei paused for a moment before continuing, that's not really a good idea. I just wanted to save time by provoking her into going berserk. In fact, whether it's a corpse or a human, as long as you don't blow at the candle won't go out. Zhuge Yun was speechless. So what you said just now was a lie. Hellion Vivian did not feel guilty, Of course I have to use some tricks to win against this kind of acting. Young man, you still have a long way to go in life. You need to know how to adapt to the situation. The bigger fetus and the smaller fetus nodded heavily as if they were agreeing with their mother's words. That's right. One must adapt to the situation. Zhuge Yun muttered, if Ni Feng knew that you were just testing her and couldn't really verify her authenticity, I wonder if she would be so regretful that she would vomit blood now. As long as you don't say anything, she won't know. Hellion Vivian turned around and glanced at Zhuge Yun. She smiled, you've learned to be smart. The next time you see her, you should mention this to her. I guarantee that she will be so angry that she will grit her teeth. She might even reveal her true form for the second time. Zhuge Yun was shocked by Hellion Vivian's words, see her again. How is that possible? Why not? Hellion Vivian looked at the main coffin not far away and her eyes darkened. You've seen those mutated exorcists. Once an iPhone comes back from the dead, more people in the exorcist city will mutate one after another. We won't be faster than them because I have to get the Saraira first. Moreover, the person following her is not a simple person. Do you know who he is? Zhuge Yun shook his head. He had never paid attention to the follower following an iPhone. That person was too good at hiding. If it was not for his beautiful moves just now, Zhuge Yun would have thought that he was just an ordinary person. The exorcist guardian, Jing Wushuang. Hellion Vivian touched the handle of her gun, so we will definitely meet an iPhone again. There will even be a tough battle in the exorcist city. Chapter 782. Hellion Wei Wei's prediction was right. Although Jing Wushuang was injured, his movements did not slow down at all. He had the innate ability to influence demons. Just look at the resentful baby that had been following him for hundreds of years. Young master. The resentful baby carried a gourd on his back and looked at him worriedly with dark circles under his eyes. Let's rest for a while before we continue. We're almost there anyway. Jing Wushuang coughed heavily, and his breathing became a little chaotic. However, he still insisted on leading an iPhone forward. He did not say a word. His side profile was as gentle as jade, with a coldness that had never been seen before. His injured arm was still bleeding. However, he looked as calm as usual. When they reached the black coffin, he smiled and said in a gentle voice, open the gourd. She needs resentment. The resentful baby nodded. He always obeyed Jing Wushuang with his dark circles under his eyes. He opened the gourd with his small hands and sprinkled the resentment around the black coffin. The curse of resentment was activated. Illusory faces surged out from the magic mirror like white smoke. Go in. Jing Wushuang led an iPhone, whose face was covered by a veil, over to him. His eyes were filled with a comforting warmth. Soon, you'll truly come back to life. An iPhone had been waiting for this day for too long. From the moment the man found her, she did not want to be a corpse anymore. Her father was gone. The Ni family, and even the entire exorcist city, should belong to her. Without any hesitation, Ni Feng lay down in the black coffin and closed her eyes. Jing Wushuang smiled faintly. The blade cut through his injured arm and let out a lot of blood, just to complete the resurrection curse. The resentful baby looked at his pale face and lips at the side, but did not say anything. He seemed to be used to it. He was used to what his master did in order to bring that person back. The bright red blood seeped into the coffin as if it was being absorbed by something. The aura in the magic mirror surged and rushed to the top of the coffin with resentment. Rumble. A roar from the depths of the earth shook the gates of hell. Under the bridge of helplessness, the black water boiled. The evil ghosts that could be seen with the naked eye all bared their fangs and brandished their claws, trying to break free. Their black claws reached into the mortal world, trying to tear apart the seal on the divine great land. The reapers couldn't help but tremble. They looked at each other, and the chains in their hands that were used to bind souls were shattered by the formless resentment. In the seventh hell, the little king of hell was sucking on his pacifier as he listened intently to King Yenluo's lecture. Even though he was nothing compared to King Yenluo, who was as tall as a mountain, he was nothing more than a speck of dust. But his shouts were unparalleled. What's going on? Is someone trying to kidnap me again? I'm free now. Tell them to come quickly. Reporting to Little Master. No, it wasn't a kidnapping. Someone touched the magic mirror. The underworld judge wobbled as he held on to his tall hat. When the Yama King heard the two words magic mirror, an unprecedented baleful look appeared on his face. Say that again. Why was he being passive? Magic mirror. The magic mirror in the mausoleum. Yes, yes. The underworld judge didn't get to finish his sentence. Then, King Yanluo left in a flash. Only the little king of hell was left behind, his hands and feet bound. The little king of hell paused for a moment, and then immediately said to the underworld judge, "Undo the mysterious ice shackles on my hands." No, no. Although the underworld judge stuttered, his stand was firm. The son of the king of hell narrowed his red eyes. Say that again. Do you want to undo it? Undo it. Compared to the master, the little master's viciousness was the most terrifying. But, little master, where are you going? The little king of hell looked back as he opened his bag. Didn't you see? I'm going to the mortal realm to save the humans. Do you still need to bring a lollipop for young Master Hook when you're going to save the humans? The underworld judge exposed the little king of hell's lie with a sense of justice. Little master, I feel that at this time, the most important thing for us is to maintain the order of the underworld, and not to talk about love. Furthermore, you're still young. The little king of hell carried the bag on his shoulder, looking very cool. Little Sue, listen to me, there's no use in maintaining the order of the underworld at this time. There are still 24 hours before the seal is completely broken. After 24 hours, the path of life, death and reincarnation will be tampered with. Unless the Phoenix Maiden truly awakens and reseals the mainland, the evil spirits trapped in the 18th level of hell will still leave when they need to. The world is about to end, and you still want me to work overtime in the underworld, not allowing me to reunite with young Hook. Think about it yourself, do you still have any humanity? Hearing this, his way of doing things was indeed a bit. No, wrong. Little master, if the path of life, death and reincarnation is tampered with, the dead will come back to life, and the living will die. Young Master Hook won't be born. At this crucial moment, the underworld judge finally stopped stuttering and roared out what he wanted to say. The little king of hell suddenly stopped himself from taking a step forward. His handsome little face turned around abruptly, and his big red eyes narrowed into a line. Damn it, I actually forgot about this. The underworld judge wiped the sweat off his forehead, thinking that he finally managed to keep the little master. He saw the little master throw the bag on himself. I have to make a trip to the mausoleum and find the Phoenix Maiden. Let her think of a way. Wait, little master, wait, rumble. There was another violent tremor. The resentment gathered and took form. Countless shadows were sucked into the black coffin one after another. Finally, they merged into one with the blood, injecting a soul into the corpse in the black coffin. Ni Feng's eyes opened abruptly. Her whole body twisted strangely. After the dust fell to the ground, she became as soft and natural as a human being. There was still warm blood on her arm, but she didn't care at all. Her fingertips lingered on her wrist. It was as if she was feeling the aura that she had touched not long ago. That strong and familiar aura with a sense of Buddha. She stuck out the tip of her tongue and licked her wrist. With an unusual smile, she looked at the man standing at the side. There was a touch of warmth at the corner of her mouth. "Wushwang, I'm back." As she spoke, her eyes lit up as if she smelled something. She softly said, "He's here too, right?" Ni Feng's fair face was slightly flushed. She looked at the other side of the mausoleum in a daze and sighed slightly like a young girl who had fallen in love. Jing Wushwang nodded and bent down to carry her. "The demons and ghosts are coming. Your body is still very weak. Let's go back to the exorcist city first." "All right, I'll listen to you." Ni Feng gently lowered her eyes, but she was still reluctant to leave. And the person she was reluctant to leave was Beligaju. Chapter 783. The ghost baby saw everything, and for the first time, felt pity for its master. Because no matter how much its master did, the other party could not see it, and would always be concerned about others. Rumble. The third tremor. Along with the ancient tomb, the stones tumbled down. Under such circumstances, the exorcists found it difficult to stand still. Unfortunately, there was still a barrier in front of them. This light card was the existence of a two-faced person. The front was Buddha. The back was Bodhisattva. The Buddha's side pitted all living beings. The Bodhisattva's side frowned slightly. The two-faced person was meditating, holding a string of prayer beads in his hand. No matter how the tomb shook, his figure did not change at all. Behind him was the Saraira that was emitting spiritual light. However, there was not only one Saraira, but at least three of them. Beligaju squinted his golden eyes. Looking at the two-faced person's face, he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. What's the situation? Why are there three Sarairas? Zhuge Yun was a little dizzy. Elderly muttered shakily, "You have to choose the right one. Once you choose the wrong one, the real Saraira will self-destruct." It turns out that the legend was true. When Grandmaster Hume passed away, he gave the experience of the Buddha to the people of the world so that they could make a choice. His own soul was the guardian of the relic. When he left the world, he once prophesied that in the future, there would be countless people wanting to obtain his relic, and he was waiting for those who were fated with Buddha. To put it bluntly, you have to choose one of the three. Hellion Vivian, who was approaching the main coffin, looked at the Saraira that was close at hand, and spoke quickly, "No hints." The two-faced person smiled. "Benefactor, you can ask this penniless monk 3 questions to determine which of the 3 is the real relic. However, there is one point. We have 2 sides. One side is telling the truth, while the other side is telling lies. Therefore, this penniless monk's hints might not be correct. You need to distinguish them yourself. If you guess wrong, there won't be a second chance. The relic will immediately self-destruct. How about it, benefactor, do you want to guess? The hints given are not necessarily correct. How can I guess then?" Zhuge Yun finally stood firm, but he could faintly feel that the air around him had changed. The peachwood swords on every exorcist's back were clanging, strongly indicating the arrival of the demons. Zhuge Yun turned his head and looked at Hellion Vivian. "Brother Wei, we need to hurry and leave the ancient tomb. Now that the other party has activated the resurrection curse, the Saraira won't be of much use anymore. In a while, a group of demons will appear and evil qi will surge out from the tomb. Without the protection of spirit qi, you will die here, then I still want to get the Saraira." Hellion Vivian interrupted Zhuge Yun's words and said in a clear voice, "You and the other exorcists take Elder Li and leave first. When I get the Saraira, I will meet you all." Zhuge Yun hesitated. "But, Madame Zhuge is still waiting for you in the exorcist city." Hellion Vivian's eyes were extremely bright. "Don't forget what Elder Li said just now. Once the ancient tomb falls, the exorcist city will be in trouble. Moreover, Feng and the others will definitely return to the Exorcist City. You can go back and protect Madame Zhuge. Zhuge Yun looked at Hellion Vivian's face and knew that he could not persuade her. He gritted his teeth and said, "We will wait for you first and try to suppress the evil qi. After half an hour, if you still haven't gotten the Saraira, we will return to the Exorcist City first." Okay. Hellion Vivian indeed needed people with spirit qi to help her suppress the invasion of the evil qi. Although His Highness was omnipotent, he did not have spirit qi. It would be best if the exorcists could buy time for her, because Hellion Vivian knew that the baby in her stomach could not be invaded by any more evil qi. Otherwise, it would be completely demonized. She would never allow that to happen. Hellion Vivian calmed down, closed her eyes and began to think about the two-faced person's words. She was allowed to ask 3 questions. It sounded like a lot. If she asked whether a Saraira was real or fake, she would be able to determine which one was real. However, it was possible that the other party was lying. This would cause a lot of trouble in choosing the Saraira. It was very possible that the first Saraira was real, but if she met the lying person, he would tell her that the Saraira was fake. Not only would it waste a question, but it would also make things more chaotic. She would choose the wrong one in the end, and the Saraira would self-destruct. Therefore, if she wanted to find the real Saraira, she had to solve this problem first. Hellion Vivian's eyes suddenly widened. They were as bright as the stars. She had to first determine which side of him was telling the truth and which was lying. "I've decided to guess." She looked at the two-faced person. Her expression was neither servile nor overbearing. The two-faced person chuckled, "Very good. This is the first time this poor monk has met someone as straightforward as you. Don't you want to think about it for a while?" "There's no need." Hellion Vivian's expression was as calm as usual. Her eyes were so bright that they seemed to be shining. After hearing her confirmation, the two-faced person turned his body and looked at Hellion Vivian with the side of Buddha. He was kind and serene. "Since that's the case, please ask the first question, benefactor." Hellion Vivian looked at the exorcists who were casting spells behind her. She pointed at Zhuge Yun and asked clearly, "Is he a human or a demon?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this question. They all looked at Zhuge Yun. Zhuge Yun, who was still trying to cast spells, looked at Hellion Vivian with a confused expression. His eyes immediately changed. He was very excited. "Brother Wei, don't tell me you suspect that there's something strange about me." "I swear I really don't." "I know." Hellion Vivian smiled with a unique black-bellied flavor. "It's because I know there's nothing strange about you that I'm asking." When Zhuge Yun heard her words, he could not help but smile bitterly. "Brother Wei, you only have 3 chances to ask a question in total. You actually wasted one of them." The other exorcists also felt that this question was somewhat inexplicable. Hellion Vivian did not explain further. She only looked at the serene Buddha. "What's your answer?" The Buddha did not seem to have expected Hellion Vivian to ask this kind of question. He paused for a moment and said in his usual serene tone, "Demon." "Very good." Hellion Vivian smiled. The corners of her mouth curved into a smile. "I see." The Buddha's side was lying. That corresponded to the Buddha's side being telling the truth. When they heard the word demon, everyone almost instantly understood the meaning of Hellion Vivian's question. She was using this method to determine which side was telling the truth and which was lying. She was too smart. This person was really too smart. Chapter 784. The exorcists had no way to describe their feelings at this moment. Looking at Hellion Wei's eyes, other than shock, there was worship. Elder Li's heart was also hanging. For hundreds of years, no one had ever been able to take something out of the tomb, let alone take a master Saraira. This was originally something that only the Phoenix Girl could do. At least, that was what he thought in his heart. But now... Elder Lee's gaze landed on Hellion Vivian's face. Without any hesitation, she asked the second question, "All right, then is the first Sarira real or fake?" This time, the one who looked at Hellion Vivian was Bodhisattva, who was frowning slightly. His voice was also different. "It's fake." Bodhisattva's side was speaking the truth, so she only needed to confirm one of the two Sariras. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and pointed at the second Sarira. "Then what about this one?" "It's real." Bodhisattva's side turned around, still as serene as before. "Benefactor, the 3 questions have been answered, now please make a choice." Hellion Vivian curled her lips and smiled, looking into Bodhisattva's eyes. "I choose the third Sarira." "Benefactor, are you sure?" "I've told you, the second Sarira is the real one." Bodhisattva chanted Amitabha, then shook his head. "You'll regret it." Hellion Vivian's voice was very faint, but her aura was very strong. "I'll say it again, I choose the third one, give me the Sarira." "It seems that Benefactor is sure." "Good, good." Not only Bodhisattva, but also Bodhisattva on the other side smiled after seeing Hellion Vivian's determined gaze. Following the two-faced person's actions, the soil fell off. The Buddha's light, which was enough to soften all living things in the world, soared up from the two-faced person's body and hit Hellion Vivian's body one after another. The Buddha's light dyed her white and green clothes into a flowing, brilliant golden color, as if she was being crowned a king. Waves of Sanskrit chants rang out from the graveyard, as serene as the sunlight. "This old monk has waited for hundreds of years. Finally, the fated one has come. I didn't expect it to be an old acquaintance. Ha ha ha, back then, you had the Buddha bone and Nirvana epiphany. Now, it's time to return the gospel that originally belonged to you." Amitabha. With that last sentence, the two-faced person collapsed with a loud crash. The relic, which was emitting Buddhist light, fell into Hellion Vivian's hand. There were still many things that she did not understand. For example, the Nirvana epiphany that came into the world with a Buddhist bone. For example, old acquaintances. The only explanation was that she knew this master in her previous life. However, that was not important. What was important was that she had obtained the Sarira. Without any hesitation, Hellion Vivian swallowed the relic in her hand. In that instant, in the surging river, countless living beings swept over in the form of rebirth. The bell of the hidden spirit temple rang for the 999th time. The light of the Buddha shone brightly and the golden lotus bloomed. The evil spirits in the netherworld seemed to have been restrained. They retracted their claws, but they could not resist the demonic red in their eyes. The relic in the mausoleum was also taken away. King Yama stopped in his tracks. His handsome and arrogant side profile, under the illumination of the 18 levels of hell, revealed a playful expression. "Interesting." The judge trembled as he stood up. Lord, little master, he disappeared again." King Yama coldly snorted. "Don't worry about him. You, on the other hand, lock up the most secret files in hell. Don't let anyone see them, especially those who like to cause trouble in the underworld." The judge was shocked. "The files that Lord is talking about are from the two lords of the heavenly Tao and the Buddhist Tao 1,000 years ago." King Yama laughed, with an evil aura at the corner of his mouth. "What do you think will happen once that person recovers his memories in the heavenly Tao?" The judge looked left and right, then reached out to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. I don't know. Back then, that lord fell from the heavens and became a demon. No one could do anything to him. It was just that the Buddhist Tao did not allow the existence of love. It was just a heavenly tribulation. It depended on whether one could survive it. And that Lord never seemed to care about heavenly tribulation. No one could stop him from doing what he wanted to do. If Buddha blocked him, he would kill Buddha. If God blocked him, he would kill God. Even falling from the heavens was just his self-imposed exile. Boom. With the last sound, the underworld's bridge of helplessness began to loosen. More than half of the mausoleum in the mountain was shaken away. Only the churning stone dust could be seen. Ni Feng looked at the scene beneath her feet and pushed her face into the man's chest that was filled with the fragrance of Buddha. This was the smell. Back then, in front of the Buddha, this was the smell she smelled the most. It seemed that she was the only one who remembered. Those things that happened a long time ago. Bodhi, oh Bodhi, you didn't have a heart, but you fell in love with the person who raised you. It's all thanks to that person that you never knew what was on your mind. It was just a joke, yet you took it to heart and took it seriously. That's why I had the opportunity to impersonate her so brazenly. But, Ni Feng's fingers tightened on her long sleeves, and she smiled gently. Wushuang, why didn't you follow our original plan to occupy Hellion Vivian's body? Instead, you chose this one. This was indeed her original body, but what she wanted was to completely replace Hellion Vivian. Only by messing up her fate could she become the real Phoenix Girl, and then, get that man. Jing Wushuang's slender fingers paused, and she said in a gentle voice, now, you're back. Were you hesitating just now? Ni Feng smiled faintly, and her eyes were gentle. It's rare to see you hesitate for someone other than me. Sigh, our Wushuang has really grown up, and is no longer that little Bodhi. Hearing Ni Feng's words, Jing Wushuang seemed to have thought of a very beautiful memory, and her thin lips curved up. The ghost baby watched from the side, and also felt a sense of satisfaction. There were too many things that it heard from its master. In order to bring the Phoenix Girl back. No, it should be said that it was to bring that lady back. His master had already exhausted all his means, including that lady giving up Buddhism and choosing to face the great destruction. It even used the Bodhi body to bear the last heavenly tribulation for that lady. That was why the Phoenix Girl was not abandoned by the Six Tao and reincarnated. 500 years of searching. They didn't know how many temples and Buddhist sects they visited. They kowtowed and prostrated on the mountain road, not for an audience. Just for a little clue. Finally, there was someone who called out his name through the bamboo shadow. The ghost baby had never seen its master so happy. But that lady never knew what its master had done. Including that he bore the heavenly tribulation for her, gave up his Buddhist fate, and used his 9,999 lives to exchange for her life of reincarnation. No one knew these. Chapter 785. The ghost baby paused, its eyes widening as it habitually reached out to grab Jing Wushuang's clothes. Ni Feng also noticed the ghost baby's action, but she didn't say anything. She knew that Bodhi was very smart. If she wanted to deceive Bodhi, she had to do less and talk less. In her previous life, when he found her, they didn't talk much. At that time, she was sent to the demon world, and he tried everything to save her. But he never knew that she agreed to go to the demon world because of that man. She was so close to getting Beligaju. If it wasn't for someone who came out to mess things up, the person by his side now wouldn't be Hellion Vivian. However, from the looks of it, none of them seemed to have remembered what happened in the past. Including Hellion Vivian, the spiritual energy in her body seemed to have disappeared completely. Who would have thought that the reincarnated Phoenix Girl with the Buddha bone would be in such a sorry state? Now, it seemed that she didn't need to worry about anything. The mausoleum was destroyed, and the Phoenix's Nirvana rebirth Dharma would never appear in the human world again. As long as the Dharma didn't appear, she would always be the real Phoenix Girl. As for Hellion Vivian, Without the protection of spiritual energy, even if Beligaju killed thousands of demons by her side, as a human, she couldn't resist the invasion of evil energy and miasma. Now, she only needed to return to the exorcist city, control all the exorcists, and use the magic mirror to gather all the spiritual energy in her body. Then, she could change the 6 paths of reincarnation, resurrect the dead, and let the living die. Once the cycle of reincarnation was broken, not only would she be able to control the world, but she would also be able to become one with the Phoenix Girl and obtain all of her fate. Jing Wushuang didn't know about this. From the beginning to the end, she was the only one who knew what her goal was. Since Yu Lao said that once the red string was tied, but whether it was a mistake or not, it would always exist. Then, she would turn herself into the Phoenix Girl and become that person's one and only. The muffled sounds coming from the depths of the earth never stopped, and the dust floating up from the mountainside could be felt even from the exorcist city. The world was about to change. The teams that did not reach the entrance of the tomb within the allotted time had already returned to their starting positions. Now that he heard the sound of breathing coming from the ground, it was as if something was about to drill out from the ground. Not only were the children so scared that they hid in the adults' arms, even the exorcists were worried. No one knew what had happened. The referees looked at the sandalwood incense that had been lit on the ground. It had burned out. It was originally used to determine the winner. Whichever team came back first would have a higher score. But until now, other than the teams that had yet to reach the entrance of the tomb, the other teams that had truly entered had not seen a single person. Could something have happened? Don't worry. With Elder Ni and the Phoenix Maiden around, even if something happens, it won't be a big deal. But I keep feeling that something is wrong. Wait a minute. Look over there. Someone pointed at the black fog that suddenly rose from the mountainside. His expression became very frightening. Something is really wrong. The demons and monsters that were suppressed in the tomb have all come out. All of them have come out. That's impossible. As the referees of the clan, Ni Shichong could not believe that such a thing could happen. But when he turned to look, his voice trembled. How could this be? Madame Zhuge was the calmest among the waiting crowd. She first hugged the little person that had jumped into her arms, then said calmly, no matter what the situation is, we have to think of a way to deal with it. If we start setting up the array now, we should still be able to make it. Let the children return to the city first. Madame Zhuge is right. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the sky. Everyone looked up and saw an iPhone with a veil on her face descending from the sky. Behind her was Jing Wushuang. Jing Wushuang resumed her role as an attendant and stood quietly at the side. Her presence was very weak. When the people saw an iPhone, it was as if they had seen their savior. They rushed over excitedly. Miss Ni, you're finally back. Why are you alone? Where are the others? And what's going on at the tomb? Where did the black fog come from? The black fog was released by the exorcists from the outer city. Ni Feng's voice was very soft, and she coughed weakly. She sounded like she was grieving. None of us expected that the Sarira retrieval competition would be used by someone with ulterior motives. From the very beginning, we entered the tomb, but it was not smooth sailing. 2 people died as soon as the tomb opened. We had been trying to figure out where the problem was. In the end, we found out that there was a demon cultivator among the exorcists. However, at that time, it was already too late for us to stop it. The demon sealed in the tomb was released just like that. Old Li and my father were also possessed by evil spirits and were left in the tomb. Now that the tomb has collapsed, the demons and monsters will rush over soon. We have to return to the city immediately. Ni Feng said this because she wanted to ensure that Old Li and the others could come back alive one day. She still had an excuse to not let them enter the city. Being haunted by evil spirits, that was the evil side of him. Even if they knew something, she would not be able to silence them in time. No one in the exorcist city would believe them. Humans were born with a natural fear and disgust toward ghosts. As for gods, they would worship them without any reason. Now, to them, she, the reincarnation of the Phoenix girl, was their god. Sure enough, after hearing Ni Feng's words, the people immediately started to pack up and prepare to return to the city. Madame Zhuge felt dizzy. She held her forehead with her fingers and her voice became hoarse. Old Li and Ni Biao were possessed by ghosts. What about Ah Yun? Is he alive or dead? Auntie, I know this is hard for you to accept. Ni Feng tilted her head and her eyes were red. She said sadly, when my father was possessed by a ghost, I killed him with my own hands. I almost broke down at that time, but someone wanted me to give them an explanation, so I could only do that. Auntie, although I shouldn't tell you these things, I have to say that one of the two people from the Zhuge family is very problematic. She disguised herself as a man and sneaked into the exorcist city. She has an ulterior motive. In fact, she is not an exorcist, but a demon who has cultivated. She was the one who released the demons from the ancient tomb. As for Brother Yun, he is not dead, but I'm afraid that he is now possessed by evil spirits. Even if he comes back one day, he won't be the real him. Chapter 786. Madame Zhuge's fingers froze when she heard the last sentence. She looked at Ni Feng without saying anything. Ni Feng felt that something was amiss, but before she could speak again, before she could say anything, Madame Zhuge cried, "If that's the case, let's go back to the city as Miss Ni said." Ni Feng lowered her eyes. She knew that she was too sad. It's good that you can think it through. Take care of the children. I will help everyone to protect the exorcist city. This time, Ni Feng was not lying. Only by protecting the exorcist city could the Buddha bone be completely broken. Those monsters would gather around the exorcist city because of their resentment. With them guarding the city, even if there were any changes, they could buy some time. In another 18 hours, she would absorb enough spiritual energy in the exorcist city and change her life. She would be blessed with the Dharma and become the real Phoenix girl. Mother, is brother really possessed by evil spirits? The little boy nestled in Madame Zhuge's arms, his eyes red. Madame Zhuge looked at her little son in her arms. When no one was looking, she shook her head gently. No one could possess Zhuge Yun's body. 500 years ago, Bodhi the Buddha reincarnated and left the Buddha bone in the Zhuge family. It was passed down from generation to generation as a protection. Even if he died, he would not be possessed by evil spirits. This was the secret of the Zhuge family. As a mother, this was the only thing she could do for her eldest son before Zhuge Yun passed away. When Ni Feng first started speaking, she almost believed everything she said. She was even prepared that Yun would not come back. Until the last sentence. Madame Zhuge suddenly paused. Ni Feng said that Yun was also possessed by evil spirits. However, this was impossible. That could only mean one thing: Ni Feng's words were not true. For some reason, Madame Zhuge felt that Ni Feng seemed to have changed this time. She became softer and more enchanting. Especially the light emitted from her body, she was like a holy Buddha. If she did not have the secret of the Zhuge family, she would definitely believe Ni Feng's words without any doubt. Madame Zhuge did not dare to think about the consequences, but she had never felt as uneasy as she was now. Ni Feng. What was she trying to do? Rumble. Another loud sound rang out. It was like the lightning tribulation of the 9 heavens, striking the ground one after another, creating chaos in the mountains and rivers. The avalanche started from the top of the mountain and rushed over with the momentum of swallowing the heavens. Countless demons were drooling at them. A large group of them were standing right in front of Zhuge Yun and the others. It was no longer important where the entrance to the tomb was. There were only a few of them left. After an hour of shaking, they had already reached the surface. However, the trees that used to be there were covered by snow, making it a completely different scene. This way, the giant monsters standing in front of them would be particularly eye-catching. I really didn't expect to have something to eat as soon as I came out of the underground. Furthermore, it's an exorcist that's full of spiritual energy. Those monsters licked their claws. Every monster's eyes were so red that one could smell the scent of blood. Although they were the best exorcists in the exorcist city, it was impossible for the 5 of them to deal with more than 10 big monsters. Moreover, they had used up all their strength in the ancient tomb. When they first arrived at the surface, Zhuge Yun was still looking for traces of Hellion Vivian and the others. Now it seemed that they were lucky that they were not with them. Otherwise, they would only be the appetizers of these monsters. Which one should we start with? I really can't wait. Why are you being so long-winded? Let's each take half a bite. After that, we can go to the Exorcist City's night parade. The big monsters seemed to have other plans. They did not continue talking. The 5 big monsters in front jumped up at the same time and pounced on Zhuge Yun and the others. Zhuge Yun's spiritual energy was indeed good, but he could only resist for a moment. When more than 10 monsters behind him pounced on him together, the peachwood sword in his hand fell with a clang. Just when everyone thought they were going to die, a loud bang was heard. Those big monsters seemed to have been bounced off by an unexpected force. Who has the guts to ruin our business? The big monsters covered their faces with their claws and stood up with murderous eyes. A tall and slender figure slowly walked down from the ice and snow. His face was extremely handsome, as if it was carved out of ice. His long hair was covered in snow and scattered on his side. The sound of countless wings flapping came from behind him. Then, thousands of jackdaws rushed out. The sky was filled with black wings and feathers. It was like a big snowstorm, filling the air with a thick black fog. At that moment, Zhuge Yun seemed to have seen the demon world's sea of blood. There was only slaughter and slaughter. It was no longer the person he was familiar with. It was a demon. At that moment, Zhuge Yun realized that it was not an illusion. The man who followed him into the ancient tomb was indeed a demon. Moreover, it was the kind of demon that could completely put you in hell. I'll ask you one more time. Did you eat? At this time, Bailey Jiaju was carrying one of the big monsters. The wind was still strong and fresh blood splattered on the side of his face. His eyebrows were deep and hazy. That tyrannical and threatening aura made even the monsters feel terrified. No, no. Ah. Without waiting for the big monster to finish speaking, Bailey Jiaju peeled off its chest single-handedly, as if he was looking for something. Every time he peeled off one of its eyes, his uneasiness lessened a little, and subsequently, his eagerness increased a little. All the exorcists, including Zhuge Yun, were petrified by what they saw. No one could cut open a big monster's stomach like a chicken, even if it was a demon. This kind of killing power was too great. Zhuge Yun could not help but feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. This man, who is he? Nothing. Still nothing. Then I'll just kill them all. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 big demons had their hearts ripped out by him, but Bailey Jiaju didn't seem to be satisfied at all. His bloody fingers were hanging by his side. That pair of beautiful eyes were no longer deep black, nor were they suffused with gold, but were instead bloodthirsty red. He was actually laughing. That kind of low and deep laughter made people feel even more uneasy at this time. Zhuge Yun suddenly understood what he was looking for. He mustered up his courage and said, Brother Wei might not have been eaten by the monsters. Calm down. Beligaju slowly looked at Zhuge Yun. The demonic aura on his face did not lessen at all. Only then did Zhuge Yun realize that he had touched the other side's reverse scale. At that moment, a small hand wearing a skull ring popped out from under the snow, and a childish voice was filled with dominance. Big demon. Give me a hand. I'm dragging your wife with my other hand. She's going to sink to the bottom. Chapter 787. Bailey Jia Ju's eyes narrowed abruptly. Countless snow and dust rolled up from the ground, gradually revealing the person wrapped inside. Ignoring the little king of hell, Beligaju reached out and pulled Hellion Vivian into his arms. Warmth spread from her limbs. Hellion Vivian smiled at him. There was still snow on her eyelashes. I was held up by the little king of hell just now, so I came out a little later. Beligaju didn't say anything. He turned around and grabbed the little king of hell's neck. It was you. When the tomb collapsed, you suddenly appeared and pulled her away. The little king of hell coughed heavily. How would I know that the tomb would collapse at that time? When the two-headed dog smelled your scent, it happened. How can you blame me? Every time you appear, nothing good happens. How did your father discipline you? Why didn't he obediently lock you in the underworld and let you harm the human world? Beligaju had always been unwilling to let Hellion Vivian interact with the people in the underworld. She was a human, and as long as she was a human, it was better not to come into contact with these dirty things. The little king of hell also saw that a certain someone's misophobia was acting up again. He waved his hand. I won't ask you to repay me for saving your life. Let's talk about this matter of defying the heavens and changing fate. Also, I'm here today to find your wife, not you. Big demon, can you be quiet? Killing a demon is so bloody. I'm still a child, it's not good to see these things. My old man has always paid attention to my education in this area and has never allowed me to kill in the human world. I've been doing good for so many years, so don't force me to fight with you. It's not good for both sides to suffer. Both sides to suffer. Beligaju lifted him up and looked him in the eye. He sneered, with just you. The little king of hell swallowed his saliva and said, what I mean is that we should make peace. You can't attack a child who is so much younger than you, right, big brother? Beligaju was definitely disgusted by the title of little king of hell. He swung his arm and threw the child a few meters away. The little king of hell's head happened to be facing downwards. With a mouth full of snow, he flapped his two short legs and pulled himself up like a radish. Zhuge Yun really thought that these two people would fight. At the very least, little king of hell's first reaction should be to roar at Beligaju. It was said that the seventh king of hell had always had a bad temper. He was vicious and sinister, and a low roar was enough to make 100 ghosts cry. As naive as Zhuge Yun was, he did not expect that the first thing the little king of hell did after standing up was to look at himself in the mirror. I'm still so handsome. Ah, snow-white skin, black hair, bright eyes, and white teeth. I really can't be more handsome. I really want to take a picture and send it to Little Hook on WeChat to relieve his lovesickness. The little king of hell was crying because of his own handsomeness. He had completely forgotten that he was in the ancient world and not the modern world. Wait, Little Hook. Zhuge Yun's mouth was still twitching as he thought about what else the little king of hell would say. In a flash, he carried the huge black scythe and appeared less than 20 centimeters away from Hellion Vivian. You have to find all of your memories and be reborn as a Dharma. Only then can you reseal the door to the human world from the demon world. Otherwise, the 6 Tao will be destroyed and the cycle of reincarnation reversed. No one will survive. My memories. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. What memories do I have? My past life. The little king of hell shook his head and avoided the gazes of the exorcists. His voice was tender but steady. Not your past life. It's the memories of when you were on Mount Meru and were ranked among the Buddhas. Ranked among the Buddhas. Hellion Vivian's eyes narrowed. The king of hell's son touched the bridge of his nose and said, "That's what the information says. I saw it secretly. Anyway, you used to be a Buddhist. I thought that you would be fine after you recovered your spiritual energy and gave birth to a baby. Who would have thought that you would provoke the 10,000 years tribulation? Now that a Buddhist has awakened, your power is not enough to deal with her. In another 18 hours, she will change your fate and take away your Dharma form. By then, not only you, but all living things in the world will have their fate changed. Everyone will disappear, and there will be no more variables in the 3 realms, nor will there be any more life. This should be a method that Buddhism came up with to get rid of bad karma. The heavenly axiom also acquiesced because they would not allow uncontrollable variables to exist, such as you and the great devil. Of course, when that time comes, the evil spirits of hell will also be wiped out by the light of Buddha. All demons and devils will be suppressed into the blood sea, just like how they dealt with the great devil that year. However, the great devil was willing to break his soul and wander outside the 6 realms to be reincarnated as a human. But this time, the disciple of the Buddha, the Golden Lotus, wants to destroy you. The great devil will not agree. Moreover, the people of Buddhism are too much. Why do they want to wipe out all the bad karma in the world? Woman, this time I will stand on the side of true love and support you with all my strength. After listening to his words, Hellion Vivian glanced at the little one and smiled. You and Little Hook can be considered as a kind of bad karma. We are true love. The little king of hell was very serious. Every time Hellion Vivian heard such words from a little kid, the corner of her mouth would always twitch. Her highness was as venomous as usual. She looked at the little king of hell coldly. Are you sure you are not the one who has one-sided love? Half of the king of hell's son's face darkened. After the darkening expression, it was replaced by a heart-stirring evil look. Even if it's one-sided love, I still want that person to live. You don't understand this kind of feeling, right? Speaking of which, I am a little similar to that Bodhi tree. As he spoke, he looked at Hellion Vivian. Seeing her half-raised eyebrows, he smiled viciously. Oh, by the way, woman, you still don't know who Bodhi is. He is the guardian of exorcism. In fact, he is not guarding some exorcist family, but you. What a pity, Buddha is born in many forms. You are not the same as you were before. Who would have thought that you don't even recognize your favorite Bodhi? Back then, you sat beside Bodhi every day, chanted Buddhist scriptures, watered Bodhi, and even gave him a name. However, you definitely don't remember any of this. That is why it is said that the one who falls in love first is destined to suffer. Favorite Bodhi tree. Beligaju laughed. A sinister look flashed across his eyes, and a strong sense of oppression came toward the little king of hell. Little brat, it seems that your brain is still a little muddled. She likes me the most, not some Bodhi tree. Pfft, are you worried? The little king of hell smiled as if he had seen through some secret. That's right. According to the information in chimeric hell, if it wasn't for you, Phoenix wouldn't have been sealed in all her Buddhist scriptures. Her 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls wouldn't have been shaken, and she wouldn't have been able to reincarnate. It was you who cut off her gospel. Chapter 788. Upon hearing this, Bailey Jia Ju's dark eyes flashed red. He raised his head and looked at the king of hell's son. His voice was filled with murderous intent as he said, "Should have killed you just now. The information is just something written, it won't make people angry. But when people talk too much, it's different. What do you think?" "I don't know if it's true or not." The little king of hell met Beligaju's eyes, not showing any signs of backing down. However, she has to use the magic mirror to retrieve her memories. "You should also want to know what happened thousands of years ago, right? Why did you fall from heaven? Why did she become a human? And the things I mentioned to you before, aren't you curious?" Beligaju looked into the little king of hell's eyes, his voice extremely cold. "There's no need. Whether it's killing a god or slaying a demon, I can do it. There's no need to retrieve the memories from thousands of years ago. To put it bluntly, you're still not sure." The little king of hell curled his lips and hit the nail on the head. "You're afraid. Afraid that the things written in the unjustified hell are all true." Beligaju's fingers that were holding Hellion Vivian paused for a moment, then he laughed. "Even if I did those things, so what?" "What?" The little king of hell didn't expect to hear such an answer. Beligaju narrowed his eyes. A sky full of crow feathers flew out from behind him, sweeping up snow and dust. The demons that wanted to ambush him in the distance all held their throats in pain. They didn't understand why a man's anger could make it so difficult for them to even get close. "Even if I did those things, so what? What's wrong with locking her up?" Beligaju repeated each word. That cold smile was filled with contempt for all living things, it was very arrogant. The little king of hell cursed. "Is this a simple locking? She's basically pulling out her bones so that she can't be a Buddha in this world for the rest of her life." As he spoke, he turned his head to Hellion Vivian and said, "I finally know why this man can win. He is really too shameless. If he doesn't allow you to return to Buddhism, then you will only belong to him. Are you sure you want to follow such a pervert? Do you want to remarry? There are many handsome guys in the underworld, unless you like to be tortured and tied up. Think about it carefully. This is a major event in your life. Before marriage, love is intense. After marriage, divorce because of domestic violence can be found everywhere. Think about it, you are at least young and beautiful. Don't take things too hard and tie yourself to a big devil." Every time Hellion Vivian heard a 5-year-old child talk about such adult topics, she wanted to laugh. "Don't worry, I'll get a divorce if things don't go my way. When the time comes, I can even find someone younger than me, like your little hook." Little King of Hell was rendered speechless. "Great demon, hurry up and drag your wife away. She wants to destroy my family. This venomous woman. You still have delusions about my little hook, don't even think about it." Little King of Hell was really irritable. He held his big black axe in his small hand and chopped off the heads of several demons along the way. He said that they were all his love rivals. He didn't even want to take a look at them. Zhuge-Yun didn't know what happened to this child. With the 7 Hells King of Hell leading the way, it was indeed easier to move forward. However, it didn't seem right for a group of them to follow a child around. Something like killing demons and monsters was left to the child. Zhuge-Yun turned his head to look at Hellion Vivian and Beligaju. He saw that the two of them had a natural expression of enjoyment. He felt that this was a little shameless. The other exorcists were not as magnanimous as Zhuge-Yun. When they saw the demonized Beligaju, they had an indescribable feeling in their hearts. The one who followed them into the ancient tomb was actually a demon. Although this man had helped them a lot. Exorcists had always been born to exorcise demons. It was their duty to uphold righteousness and ward off evil. They knew that the most important thing now was to expose the true face of the eldest daughter of the Ni family. They couldn't let her deceive everyone anymore. Otherwise, once the demons invaded the exorcist city, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. However, it was really awkward for them to fight side by side with a demon all the way. The smart Beligaju had long seen through these people's thoughts. The corner of his mouth was half raised. It was the kind of ridicule that Hellion Vivian couldn't be more familiar with. If anyone in this team wants to leave, you can leave now. Hellion Vivian suddenly spoke. Her voice was very light. The road to the Exorcist City will be more dangerous. We don't have time to be distracted by internal conflicts. As soon as she finished speaking, two exorcists left awkwardly. They never thought that one day they would regret this decision. Before they left, they had to give their yellow talismans to Zhuge Yun. Take these, we will also go to the Exorcist City. But to be honest, people of different paths can't make plans together. Little brother Yun, little brother Wei, you're on your own now. If it was the previous Zhuge Yun, he would definitely say a lot of things, whether it was to persuade them to stay or send them off. However, after so many things, this young man seemed to have suddenly grown up. Yes, he had a firmer belief. He only said one sentence on behalf of Hellion Vivian, okay. He didn't take the yellow talismans from the other party and asked them to be more careful. Perhaps Brother Ju was a demon, but at this moment, Zhuge Yun didn't think about the good and evil that had been instilled in him for a long time. Should he deny the other party just because of their identity? The Ni family was a highly respected exorcist family. How could the things they did be any better than the demons? Compared to those who were wrapped up in layers of appearances. He would rather believe in the companions who had been with him all this time. Then, they would walk together. Hellion Vivian didn't understand why young Master Bai Yun suddenly looked like his blood was boiling. However, since the Buddha's golden lotus was waiting for them in the Exorcist City, it must be very good at leading people to do good. When the Buddha's light shone, Sanskrit chants could be heard everywhere. People who were not firm enough would be easily influenced and lose their ability to distinguish. When the time came, it would become a problem. It was better to get rid of it now. The exorcists leaving was also a good thing for them. She couldn't let anyone who wasn't firm know that she needed the magic mirror to regain her memories. When the time came, the plan would be leaked. If she couldn't succeed in one strike, the cycle of reincarnation would be tampered with. She wouldn't allow anyone to be so arrogant as to want her man. Also, her two babies had not been born yet. She even planned to let them carry their small school bags and look for the dean. The other party wanted to take away everything that belonged to her. Hellion Vivian had a temper. Those who dared to touch her things, she would definitely let them die without a burial ground. With such a ruthless personality, was she really a Buddha in her previous life? Hellion Vivian glanced at the little king of hell again. How did I become a Buddha in the first place? Chapter 789. How would I know? The little king of hell was now looking at her with hostility. Go away, from now on, you are my sworn rival in love. Hellion Vivian snorted and pulled the little king of hell over. How could you not know? I have never liked to gossip about other people's affairs. Let go, watch your behavior, I have a family. While the little king of hell was talking to Hellion Vivian, he did not forget to hit the demons that were rushing over. A little kid with a fucking family. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and looked at him for a while, then smiled and said, You are so handsome today. The little king of hell immediately stopped his actions. With a fierce expression on his handsome face, he raised his tail and said, Woman, you are not good at anything, but your taste is not bad. What clothes do you wear? A 36-degree handsome little boy with no blind spots, Hellion Vivian continued to say sugar-coated words. The little king of hell enjoyed it very much. He hugged Hellion Vivian's leg like a brother, leaving the demons and whatever for the big demon to beat up. He said with a smile, seeing that you have such good taste, I will tell you everything I know. You must have done something in the past. The Buddhists gave you a chance, but you didn't seem to care, so you attracted the heavenly thunder tribulation. Your real body dharma form is the phoenix, born in hell, but you attracted the light of Buddha, so the Buddhists naturally want you to convert. As for how you became a Buddha, I really don't know. But I think with your temperament, it is impossible for you to be a vegetarian and pray to Buddha. Not bad, you know me very well. Hellion Vivian patted the child's shoulder. So how do you plan to attack the exorcist city? There are so many demons, you will need to borrow the soldiers of the underworld, right? Otherwise, how can you save your true love? The little king of hell narrowed his red eyes. What do you mean by saving my true love? I am the one helping you. Once the cycle of reincarnation is changed, your little hook can't be born anymore, right? Hellion Vivian flicked the Wong character on her forehead with her finger. You're such a vicious person. Why would you come out to help me? You must be up to something. The little king of hell stretched out his hand and covered his face. How can you say such impatient words to a child? I'm still young, so don't lead me astray. However, you don't have to think about the underworld anymore. If those people could be used, I would have already captured them and beaten up those bastards from the Buddhist sect with me. Everyone who stops me from pursuing my true love is a bastard. Do you understand this? I understand. You can continue. Hellion Vivian really felt that the person who could raise such a child was definitely a weirdo. The little king of hell smiled. It's a pity that they can't be used. The people of the underworld are most afraid of the Buddha's light. If they are influenced by the Sanskrit and turn around to stab me, my true love will be gone. So on this point, I am the same as you. Didn't you just send away some useless exorcists? There are not many people who dare to go against the Buddhist sect these days. Of course, your man is different. He is the one who can destroy the three paths. I remember in the past, you were among the Buddhas, but he still wanted you. You were the leader of the Buddhist sect at that time. He was the only one who dared to provoke you and even took out your Buddha bone. But didn't you say that I reincarnated with the Buddha bone? Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. The king of hell's son furrowed his brows. I'm not sure about the details, but someone must have found your Buddha bone and protected it. I feel that all these things were done by Bodhi. According to the words in the Hell of Innocence, when you betrayed the Buddhist sect, all the Buddhas were furious and wanted to send down the thunder tribulation. No one was willing to speak up for you. At that time, the great demon had already fallen for 100 years and was not in the six paths. Bodhi was influenced by your Sanskrit and turned into a human. He gave up the gospel of the head of the Buddhist sect and bore the tribulation for you in the mortal world in exchange for your reincarnation. But he mistook an iPhone for me. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. The king of hell's son nodded and added, however, don't underestimate him. Everything he does is for your sake. Hence, it doesn't mean that he will harm you even if he mistook an iPhone for you. What do you mean by that? Hellion Vivian looked down at the little person in her hand. The little king of hell smiled and his eyes were cold. Even though you know you can't get it, you still don't give up on what you like. You have to do more than others. Do you know how Phoenix can be reborn? Hellion Vivian did not speak. The little king of hell looked into her eyes and continued, bathing in the fire of hell of the demon god and feeling the light of Buddha illuminate the world. Only then can Phoenix be reborn and not be bound by Buddhism and become one of the variables in the world. No matter what he does, the end result is to help you break free from your shackles. Otherwise, you'll be dead in this life. He mistook you for someone else, but the result of what he wants to do will not change. No matter who Phoenix is, as long as he attracts the light of Buddha, it's considered a success. He's a person who does things without leaving any loopholes. He takes everything into account, including himself. Buddha always says that in the unseen world, everyone has their own destiny. If you want to come back, someone will stop you. If you want to change your destiny, you have to be ruthless to yourself. Bodhi is probably such a person. He helps you break free from the control of Buddhism. Other than this method, there's no other way. Of course, all of this is just my conjecture. As for what really happened back then, only the people involved know. I'm telling you this now because I want to tell you that you have to recover your memory. No matter what the result of that memory is, you have to get it back. Although this will make the great demon unhappy, he probably doesn't want you to remember what happened in the past. I'll be unhappy indeed. A black feather suddenly brushed past the son of the king of hell's cheek. Bailey Jia Ju dealt with a big demon with a flip of his hand and strolled toward the two of them. His eyes were as dark as ink as he said, however, compared to these, I'm more interested in knowing who bullied her when I was possessed. I have to get my revenge. The little king of hell touched his face, still in shock. You still want to kill people at this time. Aren't you worried that she didn't like you at that time? That you were the one who snatched her away? The light in Baligaju's eyes dimmed, and then he said very slowly, snatching is also a kind of ability. Shameless, too shameless. The little king of hell felt that he was completely defeated. Hellion Vivian smiled and held Baligaju's hand. What do you think of my taste? You're the only good thing about me. When His Highness was in a bad mood, he would laugh viciously. However, he had to admit that he was comforted by her holding hands. Hellion Vivian really didn't know what to do with this man. She smiled and said, well, do you think this only good thing about me was still there at that time? Bailey Jia Ju raised his eyebrows and casually sent the flying snake demon flying. Hellion Wei Wei saw how cool his actions were, so she smiled and said, what I mean is, I don't think I will like anyone else other than you. Chapter 790. Hearing this, the little king of hell, who was stretching out his paws, paused. Hey, woman, are you showing off your love with your man in front of me? Hellion Wei Wei did not bother with the little brat, her eyes were still fixed on Bailey Jia Ju. Even in the most dangerous times, as a domineering president and arms tycoon, she had to be proficient in sweet-talking so that her other half would be moved. In a while, when His Highness pounced into her arms to seek comfort, she had to tell him handsomely that love rivals were not a problem at all. Unexpectedly, that person just glanced at her and looked down at her condescendingly. Isn't that natural? If you don't like me, who else would you like? Then, he continued to beat up the monster. Hellion Vivian. Why, every time he speaks, she has the urge to remarry. Strangely, this time, His Highness actually left a way out for the monster. He let it go halfway through the beating and then said to Hellion Vivian, come here. As a pregnant woman, Hellion Vivian didn't want to argue with him. The main thing was that if His Highness didn't agree, she really couldn't say that she could get her memories back. After thinking about it, she decided that it was better to listen to his orders and go over. But before she could reach that person, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms. Her nose was filled with that person's scent. The evil fragrance was like a bouquet of flowers blooming in hell, enough to make anyone fall for it. Every time this man wanted to hug her, he never took the initiative to walk toward her. He insisted that she walk toward him. He would never change his desire to control. It was really, yeah. Hellion Vivian smiled and rubbed her face against the man's chest. You definitely don't want my dharma to be taken away by others. Because of a broken lotus. Baligaju's beautiful lips curled up mockingly. Hellion Vivian thought to herself, no matter what, she was still a golden lotus of Buddhism. Why did it sound so worthless in His Highness's mouth? I allow you to get your memories back. Baligaju said in her ear, his voice was very deep. But you listen to me, you will always be mine. If you dare to have the slightest thought of wavering, I will lock you in the demon world and let you never walk out of the door for the rest of your life." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "Why does it sound like you don't think I liked you in my previous life? Don't say things to anger me." Beligaju lowered his head and bit her neck. His white teeth, his white teeth. Hellion Wei Wei did not care about how the exorcists behind them looked at them. She turned her head and planted a kiss on the side of the man's handsome and flawless face. She smiled faintly and said, "No matter what you did to me in the past, I will still love you as before, just like how I am now. What can I do to you? Other than making you beg for mercy, what else can I do to you?" Bailey Jia Ju laughed. It was very affectionate. Even the strength of his fingers pressing on her back became a lot stronger. The smell of blood was very strong, but it was enough to make people feel at ease. Hellion Vivian automatically ignored the fact that she was going to beg for mercy. Her face was a little hot as she changed the topic. "Then let's go into the city to look for the magic mirror." "Wait a minute." The son of the king of hell walked over unsteadily with an axe in his hand. "I know that both of you are very capable, but you can't use spiritual energy or demonic aura when you enter the city this time. Otherwise, the other party will definitely notice. Think of a way to contact the people in the city and disguise yourselves as ordinary people to enter the city." Hellion Vivian thought for a while and said, "Wouldn't it be faster to steal the magic mirror directly?" "Woman, didn't I just tell you that the phoenix has to fall into hell in order to be reborn? What kind of place do you think the exorcist city is now? Groups of demons gather, hundreds of ghosts roam at night, attracting the resentment of heaven and earth. Even the underworld is shaken. The current exorcist city is no longer a city of the human world. There will be more demons swarming there. Moreover, these demons are not there to eat humans. Once the cycle of reincarnation is reversed, the exorcist city will become the new gate to hell. Countless demons will surge out from underground. They want to celebrate, and during this time, they will not allow anyone to enter the exorcist city and ruin the feast they have been waiting for 1,000 years." The little king of hell looked up and saw the exorcist city in front of him. His frown deepened. "Moreover, there is the aura of demons in there. It's really not easy to deal with. So we need someone to create a diversion." Beligaju curled his lower lip and quickly decided on a battle strategy. He turned around and said only 2 words to the empty land, "Come out." The exorcists heard a loud dragon roar. As the wind and clouds rose, they suddenly turned around. A huge green dragon faintly appeared above the man's head. And on his left was the ancient Qilin that could attract the flames of hell. Zhuge Yun swallowed his saliva. These people did not know what Hellion Vivian and the rest said, and no one would think that Hellion Vivian was the Phoenix girl. They only felt that the homosexual relationship was enough to challenge his cognition. Now, 2 ancient divine beasts had appeared, and they were only for him to command. The remaining exorcists looked at the huge dragon eyes and dragon whiskers, and their fingers were a little stiff. They remembered what was recorded in the exorcism book. It was an era when demons roamed freely, and it was also the era when the exorcist families were at their peak. But at that time, the person in charge of the 2 worlds was a great demon. In order to prevent demons from disturbing the human world, the exorcist families followed the will of God and sent down 38 divine exorcism seals to seal the king who looked down on the world. It was said that there were 4 ancient mythical beasts by that man's side. In other words, he was the king who could command all the demons in the world. The exorcists looked at Beligaju, and their expressions did not relax for a moment. All of them were speechless. Even Zhuge Yun did not expect that the other party would have such an identity. The peachwood sword in his hand fell to the ground with a crack. Hellion Wei Wei only glanced at him and understood what was going on. Her voice was very flat as she said, "What's wrong? You can't accept your identity as Brother Ju." "Not really." Zhuge Yun scratched his head. "I thought it was just written in the book. I didn't expect to see the real person." "No, that's not right. What I want to say is, didn't they say that he died under the divine exorcism seal? How did he come back to life?" Beligaju was originally arranging the whereabouts of the green dragon and the Qilin. When he heard Zhuge Yun's words, he sneered, "You want to kill me with just 38 little yellow talismans? Stupid human. Are the divine exorcism seals little yellow talismans?" Zhuge Yun felt that his profession was deeply humiliated. At the same time, he felt ashamed and scared. That's right, at this moment, all the exorcists realized that the man standing in front of them was not an ordinary human or demon. He was a legendary existence. When the exorcists thought of this, they could not help but look at Hellion Vivian. If Beligaju was that man, then who was she? You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.